I'd heard about this mammal that lived deep in Siberia. Legends say it was a nocturnal creature that fed on the blood of women and children. In medieval times, this beast would cull through villages, sucking the life out of every household. Imagine that, going to bed one night and then waking up to discover that your entire village was gone. I'd heard stories from my grandmother while growing up. Her parents had immigrated from Russia in the 1920s and set up a new life in the United States. As a child, I used to watch her warm pelmeni on the stove and smell the heavy aroma as she cooked. "This is my special recipe," she'd say. "Eat it up, or the volkolak will get you." The volkolak? That's what she called it. The creature was a popular myth among Slavic people. She used these stories as a means to persuade me, to get me to brush my teeth, to make sure I did well in school, and to compel me to do my chores. Clean your room or the volkolak will get you. But what was the volkolak? According to my grandmother, it was neither wolf nor bear, but something much worse. The older I got, the more disturbing her tales became. "I'm going to tell you a story," she informed me one night. "Everyone in our family knows it. It's part of our Russian heritage." "What is it?" I asked, pulling my blanket over my knees. "It is a great evil," she said, yanking her sleeve back to reveal a marking on her arm, a cross. "It has existed for thousands of years. We were told as children never to stay out past dark. If we did, the volkolak would get us." I sat with my back against the pillows, my eyes wide as snow globes. Those who didn't have God's protection were vulnerable to its attacks. Mothers would protect their homes by sprinkling salt around the doors at night. Anyone who stepped outside that protected boundary would be haunted. My grandmother took a deep breath, paralyzed by fear. Eventually, the protection tactics didn't work. The volkolak got smart, figured out ways to sneak past the salt rings. That's why your great-grandmother came here, to escape. She was lucky. It seemed like the perfect old wives' tale to keep children obedient. Even though these stories terrified me, I kept them close to my heart. I took them with me into high school and university, and eventually into my career as a wildlife photographer. I should mention here that growing up, I'd always loved taking pictures of animals. There was something about capturing them in a raw state that fascinated me. Eventually, a picture of a grizzly bear I'd taken in Alaska went viral on my social media. A national newspaper spotted my work and commissioned me to do a series for them. My career took off from there. Several years into my dream job, the senior editor of a magazine called me and said, "I want you to find something new, a creature that no one has seen." I thought about the first story that had ever intrigued me, the volkolak. But was it real? If I could prove that it existed, it would be the biggest story since Sasquatch. "I've got an idea," I said, "but it'll take me all the way to Siberia, and it could end up being a ghost story." "Ghosts are fine," the editor said. "If you don't find your creature, take some pictures of wolves. Wolves always do well." Through a local news connection in Siberia, I organized the entire thing. The plan was to stay with a hermit, Yuri, who lived deep in the forest about 3 hours from the nearest town. He was isolated and eccentric, but he had claimed to have seen the beast. The problem was that it was so cold at night, we'd have to keep a fire going just to keep ourselves from freezing. Another issue was that Yuri barely spoke English. I'd have to communicate in Russian to have any chance of understanding him. Thankfully, I had grown up with enough understanding from my grandmother to get by. She had been fluent and had taught me enough to make out most conversations. With her training, I should be fine. I landed in the city of and made my way to the small town where I'd meet up with Yuri. I rented an old Buick from a couple who owned a grocery store and wound my way through the maze of frozen country roads. It was already so much colder than usual by the time I reached the village. "Yuri is over there," the barkeeper said and pointed to the back of the tavern. I glanced at the fireplace and saw an ancient man reclining in a seat. He seemed so tired and drained of life. His skin was leathery from years in the sun. His beard was white and nearly down to his stomach. He appeared older than most books in the library. "Evening, sir," I said and extended my hand. "My name is Max. I'm the one you spoke with via the letter." Yuri just motioned to the seat across from him. I took it and warmed my ice-cold fingertips at the fire. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked. "Yes, I've heard the legends my entire life. I want to see if they're real." "Be careful what you wish for," he said with a hint of sarcasm. "You may find out more than you bargained for. Did your grandmother tell you these stories?" "Yes." He smiled, as they always do. Yuri pushed himself up and stretched, the stiffness in his bones creaking like branches in the wind. "All right, city friend, come with me. I'll show you my cabin and prepare you to meet the creature. But pray it stays hidden. The Volkolak does not take kindly to strangers." I followed Yuri outside and expected to see some sort of vehicle waiting. Instead, all he had was a sleigh. It was the kind you'd grip by two poles and pull it along behind you. In its body was a stack of supplies: oil, blankets, food, and water. "We must leave now," he said and motioned to the woods. "Otherwise, it will be too cold. We need to be in sight by the fire when night comes." I tossed my gear in the back and began our journey. During our hike, I was surprised at how strong Yuri was. He never once took a break as we ventured through the snowy forest. The sleigh must have weighed 80 pounds, I thought as we hiked along. Yuri tugged it with ease, always keeping his eyes ahead as we went further in. We continued slowly through the terrain, feeling the ice-cold temperatures bite into our skin. I drank hot water from my canteen and thanked God that I'd brought more than enough. We eventually made it to Yuri's cottage. I was surprised to see how small it really was. It was no bigger than an average studio apartment. In the center of the space was a roaring fire. Beside that were two cots, one for Yuri and one for me. In the corner was a tiny steel oven. There were two burners on top with enough room for two pots. Hanging from the rafters was an assortment of metal utensils and dishes. "Make yourself at home," Yuri said and looked out the window at his sleigh. It was the first time he'd taken a break. I was impressed. This man couldn't have been less than 70 years old. Yet here he was, out hiking me and making me seem like an out-of-shape city dweller. I'd stopped multiple times to catch my breath, then hurried to catch up with his unending pace. It made me realize how soft our city lives had made us. I got unpacked and settled into my new home. Yuri had the fire roaring as soon as we'd entered. We needed to keep one burning at all times to survive. In the Siberian wilderness, without insulation and electricity, temperatures dropped to astonishing levels. "You always have to keep the fire going at night," he reminded me. "Otherwise, you freeze." I asked Yuri if he would take me to the spot where he'd last seen the Volkolak. "Yeah," he said, wringing his hands with concern. "But please, do not say its name. It is bad luck." I apologize. I set my backpack down on my bed next to the camera gear. "I'm just excited is all." We got ready for a short night's sleep. There wasn't a bath or shower, so I wiped myself down with a wet towel and climbed into the empty cot next to Yuri's. It was so cold. I couldn't believe how freezing it was. If you pulled off your blankets and stepped just inches away from the fire, you felt the air penetrate your skin, like your insides were freezing slowly. I sank into my mattress and covered myself with my blankets and closed my eyes. That night, I had a strange, horrific dream. In it, a slender, emaciated figure crept into our cottage while we slept. The intruder crawled toward my bed, then pushed my hair aside and exposed my neck. My arms twitched as it started to feed. Razor-sharp fangs dug into my arteries and drained my blood. When I woke the next morning, my head throbbed. I was exhausted and starving, like I hadn't eaten in days. It was still dark out, and Yuri was casting a log onto the fire and preparing tea on the stove. "You slept in late. If we're going to reach the cave, we must leave soon." "I'll be ready." I sat up and gasped as my head pounded. I must be dehydrated. I grabbed the canteen beside my head and took another swig. The sun was out as Yuri and I made our way from the cottage. We were going on an hour's hike deep into the woods. It was the last place he'd claimed to have seen the creature. It sleeps during the day, so if you can find its resting place, you can easily document it. He led me through a long trek across a frozen river surrounded by berries and other beautiful Arctic plants. I was amazed at the serenity of the place. It was so silent, so untouched by man. At one point, we came across an ancient hunting shack. Its roof was worn and dilapidated. A snow owl perched on its roof and watched us mysteriously. The creature seemed to hold a world of stories unto itself. I wanted to ask Yuri if the shack was his, but he seemed so focused on his path, so I kept silent and continued following him through the snow, doing my best to keep up with his vibrant steps. We eventually found the mouth of an isolated cave. Worn, rotten boards covered most of its opening. It looked like the remnants of a mine that had been forgotten long ago. "It's in there," Yuri pointed, "but you must be quiet. If you disturb its sleep, the creature will devour you." I nodded and quickly removed my camera. I set it carefully on my lap, twisted off the cap, and mounted the lens. For this dark interior, I'd selected my Canon R6 with an RF 70 to 200mm lens. I had no idea how tight the spaces were inside, or even if the lighting would work. To get viable images, I decided on my Godox X Pro 2 wireless flash trigger and a Godox V863 off-camera speedlight. I'd mounted my flash device on a stalactite or rocky ledge with a super clamp for proper lighting. Without this preparation, the cavern would be so dark that I couldn't see a thing. "Pretty toys," Yuri said as he watched me assemble my gear. "You city folk love your toys." I stepped into the cave, but all I could find were the remnants of a fire, a few empty bottles of liquor, and a chasm stretching deep into the darkness. I tried staring down into the pit with my flashlight, but I was surprised to see that there was no end in sight. How far does it go? I wondered. There's no way I can make it down there. I wandered back to the cave's entrance and found Yuri laughing hysterically. "What's so funny?" "You went into that cave and didn't find the monster. You told me this is where you'd seen the creature." Yuri just sat there next to his newly made fire, cackling, his face puffy and red from tears. "Why are you laughing, Yuri?" "Because you're so desperate," he said, trying to contain himself. "You travelers come from all over the world, begging to see this creature." I let the camera hang from my neck, irritated at the thought of this senile hermit scamming me. "You told me in your letter that you'd seen it." "In my dreams, city friend." Yuri held his sides, laughing. "You think that if there were some monster out here, I would have seen it. I have lived in these woods for 40 years. As soon as he said those words, a disturbing, exaggerated breath emerged from the cave. It sounded like the long exhale of a terminally ill patient breathing their last. It seemed to go on forever. Yuri and I stared at the subterranean opening, expressions of fear etched onto our faces. The drowned-out breath continued for several seconds, then went silent. "Yuri," I whispered. "What was that?" He stood there for a long time, listening. "We must go," he said and grabbed my arm, pulling me back toward the trail. "Just let me assemble my gear." I knelt and started to pack. "You don't have time." "But my camera is finished packing on the hike. Do you want to live? We leave now." We made it back to Yuri's cottage just before nightfall. After a simple dinner of boiled potatoes, jerky, and tea, we settled down for an eerie night. "You seemed scared out there," I said to Yuri, watching his hands shake while he ate his dinner. "It was just the wind." "You made a big deal out of all of this being fake, and yet what?" "As soon as you heard that noise, you panicked." "It doesn't matter." "Of course it does. It was just a bear. We had interrupted its hibernation." "Why do I get this feeling that you're lying to me?" I got up and stood inches from his face. Yuri finished his meal and looked away, his face betraying more emotion than usual. I could tell he wanted to say something, but it was bothering him. But what? "I'm sorry, city friend." He got up and set his plate in the wooden sink. "It is true that I have lived out here for many years. I have seen all sorts of strange things. But this," he shook his head, "is beyond anything I can comprehend. For the first time in my life, I want to leave." "Why don't you?" "Because." He looked down, tucked his chin against his chest, and took a deep breath. "It wants me to stay." "What does?" The heavy crack of footfalls in the snow alerted us to the window. Next, the shuffling creak of tree branches being brushed by something lumbering through the woods. Yuri slowly made his way to the window. "We must be quiet," he whispered, and then cracked open the boards to look out. After panning his gaze, he closed the window. "What is it?" I asked. "Is it the Volkolak?" "No," he said, shaking his head. "It's just a deer." He sat back down on his bed. After a few seconds of uncomfortable silence, I whispered, "Yuri, I really want to see it." "You will," he said, then raised his hand as a man does when trying to calm an opponent. "I know the place where it will be. In the morning, I will take you." That night, I waited until the fire was roaring, then slipped into bed. I could hear Yuri talking to himself, like he was arguing with someone. I wondered what he could be yapping about. I got up, pried open my backpack, and brought out a tub of salt that I had brought from home. I wasn't superstitious, but I'd always remembered those stories my grandmother had told me. I'd recounted those mothers in the isolated villages who protected their loved ones with rings of salt. Just to be safe, I thought, I'll put some around my bed while I sleep. I waited until Yuri nodded off, then sprinkled a protective circle around my bed. I made sure it was wide enough, but discreet enough to be inconspicuous. After all, I didn't want to disturb Yuri and give him another reason to tease me. Once I was sure my circle was complete, I sank back down into my bed and fell asleep. The dreams that I had that night were as disturbing as before. During my sleep, the same emaciated creature crept inside our cabin and found Yuri and me resting deeply in our cots. The monster crawled toward me and licked its lips while gazing over my ivory neck. But this time, when it reached down to remove my blankets, it pulled back with a frightened groan. There at its feet was the ring of salt I had placed around my bed. At first, the creature recoiled at its sight, but then, to my horror, it grabbed a stick from the fire and brushed it against the circle, creating a slight opening in the protective ring. In fluid, quick motions, it continued brushing the salt aside until it made an opening wide enough for it to slip through untouched. The creature grabbed my head and tipped it aside and started to feed. I could hear loud and desperate sucking sounds as it drank. The next morning, Yuri was up, shuffling about and warming tea on the stove. Once again, my head throbbed and a queasy feeling overcame me. I feel sick, I thought, cradling my head and thinking back to the dream. That strange nocturnal creature had returned for me, and the way it had siphoned my blood. My fingers traced a nervous line across my neck. I noticed a sore spot just beneath my jaw. "Yuri," I said, sitting up. "Do you have a mirror?" "No," he said, his back turned toward me. "Mirrors are not allowed in here." I threw off the covers and looked at the floor. There was a thick opening in the salt circle I had put around the cot. I couldn't believe it was broken. "We must go," Yuri said without turning, "or we won't see the creature." "Give me a second." I sat on the edge of my bed, feeling like I was going to vomit. I searched for the salt container in my luggage, but I couldn't find it. Where is my salt tub? I scrambled through my gear and couldn't locate it. "Yuri?" I asked, my voice dry and groggy. "I can't find my salt anywhere. Have you seen it?" "What salt?" he said, offering me a steaming cup of tea. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do," I motioned to the broken ring. "The salt I used to make this." He glanced down at the circle and shrugged as if to say, "So what?" He returned to the oven and started pouring more tea. "Would you like honey in your drink?" "No, Yuri. I want to know where my salt is." Just then, a vision flashed in my mind. It was the nocturnal creature, wandering its way through the snow and dragging a heavily laden potato sack behind it. When it reached its cave, it tossed the bag inside. There was my salt container thudding against the walls of the earth. "What is it?" Yuri said with concern, noting my blank stare. My vision had ended. I was back in the cabin as confused as ever. "Forget it," I said. I just stood there uncertain, focusing on the sore marking on my neck. I wondered why these visions were happening, and if there was any chance that they were real. It was almost noon by the time we made it out of the cabin. I felt exhausted and devoid of all strength. I didn't want to go anywhere, but I had to get my picture. I had to finish my assignment. All the energy I had spent in coming here had possessed me. I needed to see this job through, prove to myself and the world that the Volkolak was real. I fought sickness and fatigue as we hiked. It was like I haven't slept in days. It made it hard to even stay awake. "This way, city friend," Yuri said, leading me through the snow. This time, he was so far ahead of me I could barely see him. "Honestly," I mumbled, bumbling my way after him, "I don't think I want to be here anymore." I felt a scab along my neck and started picking at it. "Yuri?" I asked, trying to recover my breath. "Do you have bedbugs out here?" "No." His voice responded, laughing as if I'd told a joke. "No bedbugs. Too cold." "Then what did this?" I shouted, touching my neck. "Something bit me last night. I keep having these strange dreams." "So do I," Yuri called back. He was up ahead of me now, so far that I couldn't see him. Dreams of a beautiful woman joining me in bed. "No, listen to me!" I stopped and shouted, staring deep into the forest. "Don't lie to me. I put salt around my bed last night, and this morning I noticed something had broken it. What are you not telling me? Yuri's voice was quiet now. Then it rose, sounding much closer than before. I can see that the snow is getting to you. It's not the snow. You're hiding something. Yuri's laughter seemed distant now. Then, to the right of me, I was surprised at how far off his voice sounded. It was like he was in two places at once. You really want to know? His voice trailed, a new hostility there. You came all this way to find your monster. Did you ever think that it was the one who brought you here? The Volkolak? I gasped. Yuri appeared from the trees, wearing a mischievous smile. Yes, you're not the first to come looking for it. He stepped toward me and I backed away, disturbed by his menacing stare. I'm calling off this assignment. My voice shook, trapped in my tightening throat. I want to go back. Go where? Yuri scoffed as if offended by my remark. There is nowhere to go. I'm returning to the village. I spun on my heel and headed back in the direction of the cabin. It is too cold to leave now. You are in no condition to hike. You will have to spend another night in my cabin. Another night? The very thought of spending another evening in that prison made me want to vomit. By the time we had reached Yuri's cottage, I was devoid of all strength. The day's hike had completely sapped my energy. I was slouched by the fire as Yuri boiled more tea on the stove. Here, city friend, drink this. It will give you strength. I don't, I barely said, want it. Take it. He set the mug in my hands. If you refuse, you will have no energy to make it to the village tomorrow. I numbly took the cup and brought it to my lips. Yuri watched me as I drank, then turned back toward the oven. As soon as his gaze left me, I cracked a wary smile. Yuri hadn't realized that I'd faked sipping his concoction. I spat its contents into the mug and poured it out behind my bed. Now, Yuri said, moving to the edge of his bed facing me. What will you tell your employers, since you have not photographed the beast? I'll think of something. My eyes drifted to the camera back next to my cot. I had to leave it there close to the fire with all of my valuables to keep warm, otherwise it'd freeze. If I could make a suggestion, Yuri began. Maybe we can find a moose. You take some pictures, do tricks with your editing software, make it look like a monster. That's a great idea, I said, trying to stay awake. You seem tired. Why don't you get some sleep? Alright, Yuri. I leaned back in my bed and pulled the blankets over my body. I'll see you in the morning. They say you can't get out of a cat and mouse situation until you realize who the cat is. If you're the mouse, you have to think of ways to outsmart the predator. Well, that's exactly what I did. In addition to pretending that I'd drunk Yuri's concoction, I'd snuck my camera and speedlight out while he was gathering wood. I'd concealed both under my blankets before he came back in. Plus, I'd also pretended to be more tired than I was. I'd figured Yuri was hiding something from me the moment we'd met. My grandmother had always told me, trust no one, Max. Use your brains to outsmart those who would hurt you. Grandmother had a knack for identifying dishonest people. So did I. By the time I'd pretended to fall asleep, Yuri was out cold, snoring like a man who had downed one too many drinks. The fire crackled as the frozen wilderness grew quiet around me. The night seemed to go on forever. I cracked open my eyes and wondered how long I could pretend to be asleep before actual exhaustion overtook me. Then, at some point, perhaps an hour later, I heard a loud creak from the other end of the cabin. Yuri was awake, speaking softly at the door. He seemed preoccupied with something, nervously wringing his hands as he cracked it open. I couldn't see from my angle, but I could tell that a tall and lumbering figure was outside, and it was breathing heavily. Yuri never looked up as he spoke to it. "You must hurry," he whispered, his voice shaking. "The photographer suspects you. It's not safe." There was a long, slow exhale, and before I knew it, Yuri had already been pushed aside as a strange shape stepped in. It was a creature. Its long, exaggerated breaths froze my blood as it slowly crept toward me. The animal's face was hideous, its limbs long and emaciated. Its eyes were glowing like embers set in a brown furred face. What on earth is that? I thought. My grandmother's stories were true. It was the Volkolak, in the flesh. It was so much more haunting than her stories had described. The smell of the creature was horrific. It resembled the scent of rotting meat. I'd encountered it once before while photographing grizzlies in Alaska. I'd come across a moose carcass that had been swarmed by vultures. This was 100 times worse. The Volkolak slowly leaned itself over me and reached for my blanket with a long and serrated claw. It looked like the paw of a wolf, but it was more dexterous and human-like. The stories are real, I thought, nearly fainting. All those legends that they used to scare children had actually happened, and all those victims, they had actually died, and I was next. I waited until the creature's face was directly above me. I kept my eyes sealed shut. I wouldn't dare open them and risk being caught. I couldn't hear Yuri anymore, but at this point, I didn't care. All that mattered was survive. I bolted upright and swung the camera in front of my face. My speedlight was mounted on top of my camera and aimed directly at the creature. I'd moved so fast that I'd surprised myself and the Volkolak. I snapped a picture. A bright light filled the room, blinding my opponents. The creature stumbled back, nearly bowling over the flames. "Come on," I snapped another picture. The Volkolak screeched and rubbed its eyes, trying to get the stars out of its vision. Yuri thrashed in the corner, covering his face and stumbling into the oven, a pot of cold water splashing onto his body. "Ah, you stupid bastard! What are you doing?" he screamed. I waited until the Volkolak was directly in front of the fire and aimed my camera again. This was my last chance. If my strategy didn't work, I'd be good as dead. I took my final picture. This time the Volkolak roared as it fell into the flames. I leapt back behind my cot as the beast thrashed in agony, making ungodly screams. Yuri leapt forward, scrambling, trying to save his monster from the conflagration. "Here, my master, I will save you." In the monster's frantic movements, one of its monstrous talons swept across Yuri's stomach. "Ah!" The hermit screamed and fell to his knees, trying to hold in his intestines as they spilled out. I shielded myself as the Volkolak stood, charred fur covering its entire body. It looked at me, then bolted outside, nearly caving in the entire cottage as it fled. Its heavy footfalls landed in the snow. Distant trees splintered. An ancient cry went up in the darkness and nearly emptied my bladder. I listened to its cries grow faint, then fell silent. I can't tell you how long I hid in Yuri's cabin, waiting to make sure that thing wouldn't come back. A few hours later, it did. I heard the Volkolak's enraged, labored breaths as it circled the cottage, its loud, heavy footfalls crushing the snow. The entire time, I huddled in the corner with one of Yuri's knives, shaking as I sat next to the fire. I couldn't figure out why the beast wasn't coming in. At one point, the Volkolak's face appeared at the door. Its glowing eyes focused on me through the narrow opening. It whispered something, then thrashed about and went away. I glanced at Yuri's corpse and realized the cottage isn't his anymore. He's dead. The Volkolak has to be invited in. Grandmother had never told me that part. It added a new depth to her stories. It meant that all those people who had perished, they had been sacrificed by someone, probably a family member or friend in their own village. It made the horror of her tales even worse. At some point, due to exhaustion, I fell asleep. In the morning, I packed my things and prepared for the 3-hour journey back to town. The truth that Yuri had been offering me to this beast as a nightly meal was reinforced after I'd poked around his cottage and found a small hatched door beneath his table. After I opened it, I discovered hundreds of wallets and passports, jewelry and other valuables from travelers who had made their journey out here and never returned. Each a victim who had been desperate to put a face to the legends and paid the price. I took what evidence I could carry and began the long hike back to the village. I was so exhausted, but I had to make it home. I had to tell everyone about the monster I'd seen. I've been in the village for almost 3 hours now. I've alerted the authorities, but the nearest police station is 6 hours away. I'm going to compile all the evidence now so that when they get here, I can explain everything. When I get home, I'm going to prove to everyone that my grandmother's stories were real, and that the Volkolak is more than a legend.
Alright, so my grandpa is kind of a goofball. Well, he's more a full-blown psychopathic lunatic. A lunatic that lives in the room next to me. The entirety of our family casted us out because of the shit my grandpa pulled during his younger years. I won't really go into that, but to give you an idea, he's been an addict for most of his life and suffered everything he could have because of it. From gang violence to overdoses, from harassment to full-blown rape. It's probably better if I start from when shit really went down in not only his, but also my life. 6 years ago, when I just entered high school and my kid brother entered elementary, my grandpa got a huge cut in his forearm. For some reason, the cut never really healed properly, and at some point, mostly because of his negligence, it got infected, so the doctors had to amputate it. He didn't really seem to mind and was rather calm when we brought him to the hospital. But then, he did what he usually does. Start some random shit. He asked the nurse to give him a bag of blood for him to take home, because he said he felt dizzy and would really need it. After the nurse repeatedly told him no, he presumably started to attack her, screaming, "Just one bag, you filthy bitch. He doesn't want mine anymore, don't you understand?" Luckily, the nurse didn't sue him, for I'm sure we would have to pay for him, because my mother's heart can't bear seeing her father serve time. She probably knows that once he's in, he'll either stay there for good or get out in a body bag. From that day onward, I kept hearing him say, "I want to go back," in the middle of the night. After a few months, he started to become stable again, even better than he was before the amputation. My mother even let him take my little brother to the park, after he kept begging her to let him spend more time with his grandsons. She accepted, but of course, both me and my mom came along to keep an eye on him. If only we did a better job. And half an hour before we were about to leave the park, both my mother and I let our guards down, and before we knew it, my little brother and my grandpa had disappeared. We called the police, and a whole operation had started, but they were both nowhere to be seen. Until my grandpa came home that night, telling us that someone kidnapped my little brother. He didn't answer any of our questions with a clear answer. The only thing he said was, "I can finally go back," making us suspect the worst. We called the cops, but as soon as my grandpa noticed, he struck my mom and made a run for it. I haven't seen him since. A few years later, I got a note in my locker that said, "It's really great here. I wish you could see it all. The underworld is really something else. I still miss you both, you and your mom. Could you do me a favor and leave some money near the dumpster at the local coffee shop? Something like 1 or 2,000 will be enough. Grandpa." I made sure to keep everything about what happened to my grandpa a secret from the people at my school. So, although it's still possible they found out, it's very unlikely that this was some kind of prank. I'll tell you guys right off the bat, I didn't go to the dumpster, even if my grandpa would be there, because I'm too scared to see him again. Last year, they finally found what was left of my little brother. In the sewers, a short distance from the park we visited, a group of teenagers found him when they were trying to make a spooky vlog. The following part took me a whole week to write, because every time I tried, my fingers started to go numb for some reason. His neck was chained to a wall, and his skin was pale as could be. The autopsy showed he died of chronic anemia only a month ago. His body was filled with puncture wounds, and there were empty cans of soup and other foods scattered across that part of the sewer. My grandpa was still nowhere to be seen though. Yesterday, a package arrived at our doorstep. The package had my name on it, so my mom just handed it to me without opening it. I didn't order anything recently, so I wasn't really sure if I should have opened it, but it had my name on it. So I took the package to my room and opened it. A small moment before I did, my mind sent me some eerie thoughts. Don't tell me Grandpa sent me some body part of my little brother, I thought. As soon as I opened it, my heated body started to cool down. There was a camera and a note. It read, "I hope this package reaches you well. Some punks must have found my place because I saw this camera near your little brother's body after I got back from doing shopping. I went to the underworld as soon as I could because the police would have arrived sooner or later. Anyway, you probably know what I did to your little brother. I'm not sorry for it. He didn't want my blood anymore, so I had to find someone with the same type of blood as I. I'm sure you must be mad, but you won't be once you see how awesome this place is. I took the camera with me so you can find out yourself. He told me to never record anything, but I still did it. Fuck him. Take a look, I'm sure you'll like it. P.S. If you want to come too, meet with the man in the video around minute 4 or something. He can be pretty hard to find though. He'll tell you what he wants for the trip to the underworld." I haven't watched the film yet, but I will, as soon as the chills stop running through my body. I watched his recordings, and I came up with 3 possibilities to explain what I've seen. Either he's someone knows, some really tech-savvy guy that put this shit together, or his lunacy is something genetic and bit by bit I'm also going insane, or that cunt actually found something, some really strange place. After waking up, or more like after getting out of bed, not sleeping for the whole night, I decided I should just take a look before the curiosity consumes my whole life. There are 5 recordings. I'll give a summary of each of them. The first one starts off with him in the sewer, with 30 seconds of him aiming the camera at the floor, not realizing he already started the recording. After a swift shot of my little brother's body, he walked through the sewers. Without speaking, he climbed up a ladder, walking the dark streets of our city. A homeless man walked up to him, asking, "I'm sorry, ma'am. Do you know where I can find the supermarket?" My grandpa pulled out a knife, shocking the homeless man, who put his hands up after seeing it. "Oh, hold this camera. I'm making a film for my grandkid," he said. He gave the camera to the homeless man, who was now filming my grandpa. My God, I thought. He was wearing a dress riddled with holes, a wig, and a face full of makeup, looking like something between a clown and an old woman. "Hey kid, what do you think? Pretty fancy, huh?" he said, as the homeless man's hands were shaking the camera. My grandpa hit the homeless man with his stump, yelling, "Don't move, damn it. I'm going back to the underworld today. I'm so excited. I can finally show someone how great it is there. I'll be meeting my buddy." My grandpa stopped talking after the homeless man started to shake again. He lunged towards the man fiercely. I wasn't really sure what happened, but I'm guessing he took a stab at him because he started to scream for help, after which my grandpa started running with the camera. A minute later, he showed a man in the far distance with a black hat and a tall coat. "That's him. Remember him, kid. I'm going to put the camera in my pocket now." The camera was able to film the waist of the man through a hole in his dress. I'm guessing he walked up to the man as I could hear them talking. The sound was muffled, but I heard my grandpa's voice clear enough. "I got one more jar," he said. After some altercation, he started begging the man. Please take it. It's all I have." I couldn't really hear what the man was saying. The words I could make up were, "We've got enough of that. I need valuable. Maybe..." My grandpa started to say, Of course, a bunch of time, after which he got something from his other pocket and started to shake. The camera's vision got blocked by the dresses cloth for a second, after which my grandpa asked, "This much?" The man didn't say anything. And after some movement, my grandpa gave a short scream. I'm guessing he wanted to scream more, because he crouched down for a minute or two, shaking on the ground. My eyes were totally hooked on the camera, as I felt my hands were beginning to sweat. He stood up after some time and straightened his dress with his still trembling hands. I could see through the hole again. He handed the man something. "This will sell very well," the man said, as he took what could only be my grandpa's sexual organ, slowly leaking blood, flowing down his arm. I'm going to be completely honest. I had to clean a lot of vomit off the camera after seeing that part. They started walking, but after some time, my grandpa fell and the camera didn't pick up much sight nor sound. The next recording started with my grandpa's face, now without makeup, looking in the camera. "Hey there, the transaction went through. I'm waiting for my buddy to come pick me up. I'm going to put you in my bag for now. Don't worry, you haven't seen shit yet." He kept the camera rolling, but for a whole hour, I couldn't hear or see anything extraordinary, other than my grandpa giggling like a maniac. After a loud yell, one that seemed more like a scream of joy than of pain, he started digging through his bag, searching for the camera. We're here, he said, as he showed me a wooden room without any windows. I figured out it was a basement, for he started to move up some stairs. He was in some kind of old-fashioned house. He exited the house and showed me a street full of people with different colored hair. All of them were young, I'm guessing between 20 and 30 years old. Most of the girls were quite good looking, and the men were also handsome. "Hey, how much time for sunrise?" my grandpa asked out loud, not really talking to anyone specific. No one reacted. "When will it be sunrise?" he yelled. A man started walking up to him. "Calm down, old man. like 2 minutes or something. What's that in your hand? Did you bring something new? He yelled, after which everyone started to gather around my grandpa. He raised his hand and showed me all of the people around him, together with a wider view of the village. The village was in some kind of desert, and the houses were all made of wood. He started laughing like a madman again. Yes, I brought you something amazing from Earth. But first, I need to see the sun, he yelled to the crowd. Look closely, he whispered to the camera, as he pointed his camera to the moon. I kept thinking, what the fuck, through every minute of his recordings. But after he showed me the sky, I really started to flip out. He pointed the camera at the moon for a minute, and then it happened. The moon exploded, sending a wave of light throughout the whole sky. The sky turned completely dark for a few seconds, after which, out of the same spot the moon was in, a ball of light appeared with a great bang, turning night into day. The sun seemed the same as ours, but everything around it didn't, for wherever my grandpa was at that moment, the sky there was not blue, but a mellow shade of pink. Do you understand now? I had watched the explosion over and over again for at least 20 times before I move on to the third recording. I was hesitant at first, but I think it's time I introduce myself officially. My name is Basil Porton, but I go by Porter, even by my mother, since I am the only one left in our house that still carries my father's last name. I'm a teenager, born in the US, but my mother is British, and after the family casted us out, we moved to East England. You already know a lot about my grandpa, Warwick Murrow, also known as Matt Murr. Now, where was I left? The third recording was a walk through the village. My grandpa was quite famous in the strange village he called the Underworld. People would wave at him wherever he went, and a lot of people would come up and talk to him, mostly about Earth, like it was some kind of foreign place to them. I wasn't sold on the fact that my grandpa was in the Underworld. Maybe he just joined some society filled with crazy people like himself. In the fourth clip, he sat down on a bench and started explaining stuff to me. He talked about how it's never too hot or too cold, about how the sun and moon change places after every 6 hours, about how there are many kinds of plants that don't exist on Earth, and about how he can finally be accepted here, as the madman he is. Porter, I want to live here forever, but it's difficult. You see, these people, they don't starve, they don't thirst, they don't even bleed as we do. But I, as I hate to accept it, am very human. The only reason I have to go back to Earth is because at some point, my food and water runs out, and I have to go back before I'm too weak to stand on my legs. Besides, I can't do my job if I can't think clearly. Why don't you join me and bring some food and beverages while you're at it? And bring a lot. It was the first time my grandpa ever said he had any kind of job. I wondered what he was doing. He took a sip of his favorite drink. Although most would expect it to be something alcoholic, my grandpa loves to drink buttermilk. Personally, I hate it, but yeah, we don't have a lot in common anyway. The price to enter the underworld is expensive, but worth it, he said. My buddy is looking for parts of us humans. He sells them to certain people. In return, he gives a ticket to the underworld. At first, he only wanted our family's blood. He said that we were famous here, and that collectors were willing to pay huge sums of money to get a jar. After a few years though, the market changed. They wanted other pieces of us. Still worth it though, he said with a chuckle. I could never forgive my grandpa for the things he has done, but I was content with letting things end here. For all I care, he can chop himself up until the day he dies. Living there instead of here is probably for the greater good. I'm going to make one more recording before I call it quits. I have things to do. I'm a busy man in the underworld, he said. Porter, dinner's ready," my mom shouted from downstairs. "Just a minute," I shouted back. I started the last recording. I might as well finish it before I go eat dinner, I thought. "I'm going to see my boss. He's kind of a lunatic, but he lets me live, so I can't really complain," he said. What the fuck? I thought. Lets me live? "Porter!" "Just a minute, Mom," I yelled back. My grandpa started walking through the desert until he reached a well. "Hold on, Porter. I need my hand now," he said, and put the camera in his pocket. I assume he climbed down the well, because when I could see again, he was in some kind of underground place with torches on both sides of the walls, leading the way deeper down. "We're almost there," he whispered. With each step, the tension rose. My body started heating up, but after sweating profusely throughout all the clips, I had no moisture left to excrete. Then, he stopped moving, just as my heart stopped beating for a bit. Because in front of him was the most ominous and eerie-looking being I had ever seen, inciting a terror within me I never knew I could feel. Long white hair going down to his knees, a mouth with teeth that would put envy in every predator, eyes big as the moon, but mostly filled with the white, with only a speck of black the size of a pea in the middle, looking straight at my grandpa. Above all else though, a smile, from ear to ear. And no, not the expression, but literally, from ear to fucking ear. He was not human, only humanoid.
"Welcome back, friend,"
the being said, with more air coming out of his giant mouth than sound. My grandpa fumbled with the camera, and then cut the footage. After the video stopped, I stared at the camera for a few minutes. After I got to my senses, I washed my face and walked downstairs for another horror to meet me. One that was more personal. I walked down steadily, halted quickly as an image burned itself into my memory, never to be forgotten. There lay the only person, the only one I had left. My mother, on the ground with a gigantic cut in her lower abdomen, about to pass out, bleeding steadily. In front of her, an open door with a trail of blood leading outside. "Porty, it was him. Call the police," she said, after closing her eyes. I immediately took my phone, dialed 911, realized I wasn't in the US, and changed it to 999. I walked up to my mother with the phone squeezed between my shoulder and cheek. I was ice cold, focused on keeping her alive. I wasn't going to lose her. Not now. The smell of meatloaf had filled the house as I started applying pressure on her wound. The doctors told me her uterus had been cut out of her body, and that she was in a critical yet stable state at the moment. The police asked me questions, already suspecting someone, even though he had gone missing all these years. Should I show them the footage? It doesn't really prove anything, even if they believe me. For how long can they protect us? How long can they guard us from him? Do I even want them to take care of this? Until now, I had accepted everything he had done to us, mostly because I had no choice. But it seems that this won't end until I end him. The hunter must become the prey. Seeing that he stole a part of my mother, he must be on his way to the underworld now. I have to find the mystery man, because only he can lead me there. I went to the place where I saw my grandpa meet him. He wasn't there, so I went looking everywhere throughout the city, looking for this man, the only person that could lead me to my grandpa. I looked for 2 whole days as hopelessness started creeping in on me. What am I thinking? I can't do this. I'm still just a kid that hasn't even been in a single fight yet. I can't kill him even if I have to. Maybe he won't come for us again. Yeah, I'm sure this was just the last time, I thought, defeated. The tears started rolling down my cheeks. Of course he'll come back, and I won't be able to do anything. Strands of my hair were falling on the ground and my shoulders. I really am nothing like him, I thought. If anything, my grandpa always took what he wanted. He always acted however he wanted to. He acted as if the world belonged to him, which made him unstoppable. I am not like that. I stayed home for a week, visiting my mother in the hospital every night. After a week had passed, I forced myself to go to school. Maybe it'll get my mind off of things, although I really didn't want to see my friends or teachers at this moment of my life. I walked the empty halls of my school in the early morning. I moved my body, not knowing where I was going, until I realized that out of habit, my feet had brought me to my locker. I opened it slowly, after which a note fell out. I leaned down and picked it up. The moment I touched the paper, I remembered how my grandpa had left me a note all those years ago. A chill went down my spine as I picked it up and took a look. Hey dude, the boys and I haven't heard from you in a while, and you aren't answering our calls, messages, or opening the door. We're going on a camping trip. Yesterday and the day after tomorrow, it seems. So, we're going to skip school for a few days. If you are down, you can join us. Just give me a call, little bitch. Matthew. I chuckled for a bit. I forgot I had a social life after everything that happened to me. It sure is a more pleasant note than I had expected. My grandpa's note those years ago. What did it say again? I tried to remember. It's really great here. I wish you could see it all. The underworld is really something else. Could you do me a favor and leave some money near the dumpster at the local coffee shop? The coffee shop? Of course, I thought. I had come at an impasse. Give up and live my life to the fullest, enjoying it as much as I can. Or try to serve justice. And above all, revenge. I stood there with my head against the lockers, trying to think. But not a lot of thinking was going on. For the image of my mother laying there on the ground, the image of her in her hospital bed, was blocking every thought I tried to form. Do I even deserve to live if I don't even try to protect my loved ones? Fuck you, I thought. I'm going to end you and live the life I deserve to live. I started walking with the fire burning in my eyes. Am I brave? Am I wise? Or am I just foolish? Truth is that it doesn't matter. I will be whatever I need to be to make sure he stops breathing in this world and the one he has made me go through hell for. I had a lot to think about before this post. I don't know if what I'm going to do is right, but I have to see this through to the end. The world has been quite silent the past time, I thought, as I exited the bus. Here it is, the Littler, the coffee shop my grandpa wrote about. I did a Google search before coming, but I couldn't find anything about the mystery man, nor any information about this coffee shop. I wasn't going to enter the shop. I just had to get to the back. Looking around the shop, I found a small path that seemed to go where I wanted to be. I made my way, but was quickly stopped by a warm hand that gripped my shoulder. "Can I help you?" a voice asked. I turned around and saw a mountain of a man standing behind me. He was old, had glasses, with gray hair, slicked back like an Italian mobster. "Oh, I work here. I just wanted to check something in the back." "You don't work here." I do." "Kid," he whispered. "I own this place." Great, I thought. How easy can I fail the first step? I guess I'll just have to come back when he isn't looking. "He's there. But why would a kid like you want to see him?" he said, shocking me swiftly with his words. He knows? I thought. Oh crap, what do I do? You shouldn't associate with people like him. Trust me, he followed. I have to. There is something important I need to do, I said, looking him deep in his eyes. Fair enough. I can only warn you, I suppose, he said, easing his grip on my shoulder. I kept on walking until he said, "Revenge is merely a march to one's own grave." His words struck me hard, but mentally I had already passed that point of doubt. I passed the corner, and there he stood, the mystery man, my grandpa's buddy, leaning against the coffee shop's wall. "Can I help you?" he asked upon seeing me. "I'm Warwick Murrow's grandchild," I responded. He stopped leaning and straightened his back. "Oh," he said. "Porter, right? He has talked about you a few times." I cut straight to the chase and asked, "What do you need me to do to get me to the underworld?" "Tone it down a notch. I don't want the whole neighborhood to know. I'm guessing your Grams told you about it." "Something like that." "Listen, I'm not a bad guy, so let me make things clear for you. You don't want to go there. I'm sure your Grams told you all kinds of fun stories about the place. But your kind won't survive that place." "What do you mean my kind?" I asked. "Nothing. Just go home, kid. I'm not going to help you do anything." Luckily, I was prepared. "If you don't tell me, I'm going to tell everyone about you in the underworld." "Good luck. Do you think anyone will believe you?" "What if I show them proof?" I said with a smile. "Proof?" he asked. "My grandpa made recordings of both you and the underworld." His eyes widened as he looked at me with an expression of pure surprise. "You're bluffing." "He traded his penis for a trip," I said. The man started to sweat profusely. I got him right where I wanted, I thought. "So you want a trip, huh?" he asked. "I want a trip and answers," I responded. "I don't know, kid. I could just kill you right now, you know?" His intimidation didn't work on me though. "If I don't return within an hour, my partner will post the videos on the internet for all to see." I bluffed, standing as tall as I could, not taking my eyes off him for a second. I was prepared, but not to this extent. "Alright, can we go to a different place and discuss this further?" he asked. "We'll do this right here, right now," I said. He started to laugh, but I still kept looking at him, as stern as I could. "Alright, kid, you got me," he said. "You're not going to the underworld after you hear everything I'm about to say to you anyway. To be honest, I'm partially to blame for everything that happened. People like me take people like your Grams to, what you call, the underworld. It is, if you believe it or not, a real place, filled with people that seem like humans, but are something very different. Just like Earth, our kind has good, but also bad people just living their everyday life. The gates to these worlds are guarded by people like me. I am a little bit different though. You see, humans are quite a rarity in our world. So there are a lot of people who pay huge amounts of money to have their pieces. So you make people give you body parts to go to this magical kind of place. No, not exactly, kid. I don't make them do anything. It's all their free will. If I don't recruit regular people, I scout people who are evil, like your Grams. So you think of this as some kind of punishment? I don't really get what you're trying to do, because my grandpa wanted to go to this place. He killed my brother and attacked my mother. He said, and took a pause. Kid, here's the thing. No one is supposed to come out of that place alive. What do you mean? I asked. Your grandpa is the first client that has ever come back. I sent these evil people to the underworld to be hunted down by an accomplice of mine and make a few extra bucks of their body parts. My accomplice sells the body in Alem, and I sell the single body parts they pay me to my partners here on Earth. For some reason, your grandpa keeps finding a way to come back, and I have no way of reaching my accomplice. I just keep accepting his payment, hoping that he finally gets killed this time. Alem, I asked. If you call this place Earth, that place is what we call Alem. His story seemed to make sense. It would explain a lot. It's a lot to take in, I said. See, you don't want to go there, he said. Why did he go for my brother and mother? I asked. Well, in order not to take body parts of random people and to cause any national panic, I fool my clients by telling them only the parts of their bloodline are acceptable because they are special, even though they really aren't. Because they usually give the first part of their own body, and because they usually die after their first trip anyway. This usually doesn't cause any trouble. Usually. Why? Why didn't you just kill him here? He sighed. Kid, this world, just like mine, is a rough place. I was making money because of your gramps. Although I didn't want to get involved, I'm not going out of my way to save people I don't know. You can blame me all you want, but at the end of the day, it was your gramps that chose to hurt you and your family. I never forced them to do anything, alright? My eyes started to water, but I wasn't going to let myself cry. Why don't you just give me the recordings and we can just forget about all this? He asked. He was nowhere near a good person in my eyes, but he is honest. I'll get you the recordings, but I'm still going to the underworld. Consider the camera my payment. Fine, he said, gave me a few pats on my back, and said, let's go get your camera. We started to walk to my home without exchanging a single word on the way. I was deep in thought the whole way through, thinking about everything the mystery man had told me, about the underworld and the people that inhabit it. Although I was going there with a grim mission, I couldn't help but get excited. We entered the house. You can sit in the living room. I'll go get the camera upstairs, I said. I don't think you need to do that, he said while standing in the open doorway. He put his hand on my shoulder, then moved it to my neck and gripped it. Sorry, kid. It's just business, he said. I looked at his eyes, like the naive kid I am, and at that moment, I realized what kind of grand mistake I had made. I'm about to die. But at that moment, through the light that shone out of my doorway, an arm reached across, not my own, but the mystery man's neck. He pulled him away from me while choking him. He turned around and got inside, kicking my frozen body out of the way. I fell on my ass and kept watching him choke the mystery man for a few seconds, until he stopped struggling and passed out. It was the owner I had seen in front of the coffee shop, the one that tried to stop me. I warned you, he said. I know. I won't be around to save you next time. Stay away from Alem and stay away from this man. No, I'm going. Are you out of your mind? He yelled. Listen, I don't know you. Thank you for saving me, but I'm still going to Alem to kill him. That man is the only way I can get there. I'll just talk to him tomorrow with a different strategy or something. You can't stop me, old man. He started to get angry as the wrinkles under his eyes started to deepen. 3 days, he said. What? I asked. You get 3 days to think about it. After the 3 days, if you still want to go, meet me at the Littler at midnight, he said. Oh, okay, I said, surprised. But first, I need you to give me the recordings. No, if I do, I won't have any leverage on that man over there. I won't be able to go. He walked up to me and grabbed both my arms and squeezed. Listen to me. Alem will be the death of you. If knowing this, you still want to go, I'll at least make sure you get there alive. But I have to put the safety of my kind first. So you either trust me and give me the recordings, or I'll go get them myself. He loosened his grip, and we started to move upstairs. I handed him the camera. He watched the first 2 clips, and then put it in his pocket. 3 days, he said. I nodded, and we started moving downstairs again. To my horror, the mystery man had disappeared. But before my body could panic, the coffee shop owner quickly said, "Don't worry about him." As I had already put my trust in him, I continued to do so. He gave me 3 days to reconsider my choice. But those 3 days will only be used to prepare my plan. My plan to kill Grandpa. First, I need a gun. A gun. A gun. A gun in England shouldn't be that hard, right? I thought, eating my breakfast at 2 o'clock like I always do. Even with Mom gone, I still eat Raisin Bran. I'm such a baby. I guess I'll buy some Cocoa Puffs when I go to the supermarket tomorrow. Well, let's see. Guns are illegal in this country. I don't know anyone that has any gang or mob ties, and I got about 26 pounds. Let's go look for some shady figures, I guess. At 9 o'clock p.m., I went to the park a few blocks away from my house. Sat down on a bench filled with Sharpie drawings and waited. This park is usually packed with the dangerous sort. 3 hours later, at around 12:30, they started coming. A gang of 5 boys, on average probably around 5 or years older than I am. They started to approach me, probably because I was staring at them the whole time. With each step they took with their fancy brand shoes, my heart started to beat faster and faster. "Hey there, kinda late for a kid like you to be outside, isn't it?" one of the boys said. "Yeah, don't you have school or something tomorrow?" another followed. Alright kid, just beat it, we're going to sit here. "I need one of them grabbed me by the arm and pulled me off the bench. "Come on now, chop chop." "Just say it, Porton. Just say it," I thought, but I still merely looked at them, and sensing from their faces, they were starting to get annoyed. "Oi, fuck off before we beat the shit out of you," one of them shouted. "I need a gun," I finally said. The group started to look at each other in confusion. "What did you say?" one of them asked. "Do you know where I can get a gun?" I said. One of them grabbed me by the collar and started moving me out of the park. But one of his friends, red-haired with a shabby-looking beard, stopped him, saying, "Guns aren't free, you know. How much you got on you?" I couldn't be honest. I don't really have an idea about the prices of weapons, but I'm pretty fucking sure 26 pounds won't cut it. "I got 1,000 at home," I said. Well, the ginger said. "Quite the green you got there, buddy. Why don't you bring it so I can get you a deal?" "Show me the guns first," I said. "I'll trade you this one for the 1,000, he said, pulling up his sweater, showing a silver-colored gun, the kind of which I have no idea of. Here's my chance, I thought, and lunged for the gun in his belt. There was no way I could get a gun in a clean way. I just have to grab it and make a run for it. My palms touched the gun. It was warm, heated by the boy's body temperature. My heart raced like Speed Racer as adrenaline was rushing through my veins. Turn and run, I thought. Turn and run. They were battle-hardened, for 2 of the boys reacted so swiftly that even though I was just a teenager on his own, they'd never let their guards down. One of them hit me in the head, followed by the other wrapping his palms around my wrist, making sure I wasn't able to pull the gun out of his friend's pants. My index finger reached for the trigger, and I tried to pull it, holding my breath, anticipating a blast that would most likely blow the ginger's dick a way he wasn't used to. Lucky for him, and I guess for me too, the gun had its safety on. The one holding my wrist cocked his leg backwards and launched a knee in my guts, forcing every bit of fluid my body contained to spill on the ginger's fancy shoes. I fell down on my own vomit as the world stopped spinning for a moment. After a barrage of kicks to my sides, the boys helped me up and put me on the bench I was just sitting on. Alright, that's enough. Calm down. I'm not hurt, the ginger said. He lifted my hanging head by pulling my head towards the night sky. What the hell were you thinking? He asked, giving me a slap on the face with the palm of his hands. I need a gun, I uttered. Why do you need a gun? He asked. He's going to kill me. Kill my mother. Dude, one of the boys said, let's just leave him here. Fucker is probably crazy or something. Look at him, the ginger said. Look at his eyes. Look what he tried to do. He might very well be insane, but no fool would do this without a good reason. What the fuck do you want, man? You want to adopt him or something? He asked, laughing. Kid, you're not getting a gun. Not all of us, that is. But trust me, all of us here believe that sometimes some people just have to disappear. My eyes started dropping tears, but I felt no sadness or humiliation in any sense. I just felt like crying, I suppose. I did just almost bite the dust. Maybe some of it got in my eyes, I thought in the midst of my interrogation. Listen, does the person you need gone know that you want them gone? He asked. I shook my head, indicating a no as answer. Well, I guess you're lucky. Cherries are in season right now, he said with a smile, whispering a list of instructions into my ear. Granted, a consolation prize. I walked home defeated, if it could be called walking, in the state that I was in. Never in my life was I beat up this bad. Actually, this was the first legit time I got beat up. Television and movies are right. It fucking sucks ass. Well, I guess at least mom didn't get to see me in this state. I wouldn't want her to be worried. I got home, instantly making my way to the living room couch. The stairs can wait until tomorrow. I closed my eyes, trying to comfort myself, thinking, you only have 3 days. Well, of course you can't find a gun in 3 days. You tried your best. Don't be sad. You're just a normal kid. Guns are for criminals and police officers. It would be pretty insane if a kid like you would be able to find a gun so quickly, right? What kind of mad world would you be? Would you be living in? Wait a second. I got up, barely, for my body had already prepared itself to fall asleep when my bottom had reached the soft cushions of the couch. I made my way up the stairs, holding the railing tight with every single step. I didn't enter my own room, but the one next to it. The one that belonged to him. I hadn't entered this room in years, ever since my little brother disappeared. My god, it was a freakish mess inside. Mom never bothered to clean it, I guess. It probably reminded her of everything that had happened. After an hour or two of searching, in a secret department in his desk, I found it. A 6-shooter and a box of bullets. Of course, a man like him would have a gun. I hope he likes the taste of lead. Fired from his own trusty sidearm. I'm going to need a lot of water, but I don't want to carry too much either. Dilemmas. I pushed the cart towards the fruit aisle. He didn't tell me to get sweet or sour cherries. It didn't matter anyway. I'll get sour, I guess. Okay, let me think. I got some snacks, I got some drinks, I got some canned food, just in case I'll be there for a long time. I just need some buttermilk and a non-see-through bottle, and we're done. I walked to the checkout. My body was covered with bruises. Even breathing caused me stings of pain. With every step, my eyes would twitch from the sting. My body was tender as can be, like a juicy steak. My stomach started to grumble. My god, a steak would be so good right now. I put my items on the counter. The cashier was a cute-looking girl. Short hair, light brown eyes, with a please kill me now look on her face. I let out a short laugh because of my thoughts. The people around me gave me weird looks, whilst the girl gave me a small smile, melting my heart in an instant. My face got hot, and I'm sure I was blushing. A girlfriend would be nice though. I never had one, now that I think about it. Focus, Porter. Now is not the time. You're a man on a mission. I said to myself as the person in front of me left, which left only the girl and I at the counter, as no one had queued behind me yet. "That'll be £28.39, she said after scanning my groceries. I'm $2 short. Let me see what I can cut," I said. "Oh wait, it's $26.39, she said, ignoring the screen that said $28.39. "I'm still 39 cents short. Can you take one of the cans?" She took a look at me that practically forced my dense mind to realize what she was doing. "Oh," I said, and gave her the £26. "Thanks," I whispered as I put the groceries in the plastic bag. In a different world, maybe this would be the start of something great. But unfortunately, I'm already on my way to one. I can't let anything put my mind off it. Besides, I'm too shy to make a move anyway. Even though the coffee shop owner probably won't like it, I'll be bringing my mom's camera with me to record everything I can in Alem. Although, on a murder mission, I'm sure I'll have many moments I'd like to eternalize, I hope. With all my money spent, I went home, spending the rest of the day preparing my arsenal, whilst imagining myself pulling the trigger on my grandpa. The only thing I'm doubting at this point is my ability to be as cold-blooded as him. I didn't always hate him, you know? Although he was always the way he is now, he was kind of the father figure after my dad left my mom when she was pregnant with my little brother. I don't really remember a lot about the time my dad was around, other than having a lot of arguments with my grandpa. My mom very rarely talks about him and his reason to abandon us. But I'm guessing one day he just had enough of my grandpa's bullshit and decided to leave. I mean, look at me. I'm practically going to turn myself into a murderer because of him. The following night was non-existing. Although the sky turned dark and the hours were silent, it still made no difference to me, for I spent every minute consumed by my own thoughts. A day later, at 10 p.m., 2 hours before our meeting time, I decided I should make my move to the coffee shop. I stood there, across the street, observing the shop and waiting, counting the seconds, the minutes and hours, who all felt as slow as snails. People started leaving the shop, first one by one, then in a group of various sizes. Lastly, a pink-haired girl left the coffee shop, after which no one followed. At 11:43 p.m., the owner stepped out and took a look at me, saying, "I see you've chosen to come," prompting me to walk towards him. "I've come to settle some personal matters. I hope you understand," I said. From the path I had used to get to the back of the coffee shop, the mystery man appeared with a blank look on his face. "How you've been, kid?" he asked. My eyes widened. Hey, I said, thinking, should I be scared? I mean, he did try to kill me. Don't tell me this is a trap. "Calm down," the owner said upon noticing my angst. "If you're scared of him, you should be. But I'm here to make sure he doesn't kill you." "Stupid old timer. Always has to meddle with my business," the mystery man said, with his hands in his pockets. "We're going on a trip, but I'll have to make sure you don't know where we're going," the owner said. "I'm going to blindfold you, to make sure you don't trip or something. You can hold on to my arm if you want to. Before we blindfold him, he should know my condition. I'm quite sure this kid thinks he's getting a free pass," the mystery man said. "You're not actually going to do that to a kid, are you?" the owner said. "I don't discriminate. It'll be unfair for all those who had to pay for a trip through my gate, and it would slander my reputation," the mystery man said, and started walking up to me. "Listen, kid, the cost of a trip is a body part, chosen by whatever the market wants. Do you still wish to go?" He was right, I thought. I actually thought I was going to be allowed to pass the gate without payment. I guess my test of courage had already started. This was probably my last chance to go home unscathed. "It's been mostly talk before this, Porter. Show him what you're made of," I thought to myself as a drop of sweat fell from my forehead. "Yes, I'm still going," I answered. The mystery man's face showed every bit of annoyance he got towards me. I'm sure he didn't expect me to accept. I turned my head to the owner, who gave me a disappointed look, judging the very essence of my choice to go. He seemed like a wise man, but I don't care what he thinks. I must do this. "What body part do I owe you?" I asked. "I'm not telling you," the mystery man said, giving me a big fuck you for irking him. "The trip will take about 5 hours, after which I'll extract the payment. Upon me receiving it, you may go through the gate," the mystery man said. How about the healing process?" I asked. "Don't worry about it," he said, making me worry about it. The owner put the blindfold on my eyes, making it as tight as possible. Before I knew it, I heard a car pull up, with the hands of the owner helping me get in. After several hours, my blindfold was taken off of me. My vision was blurry, slowly fixing itself on the image of the mystery man sitting in front of me on a wooden chair. The room was filled with a bitter smell, making me gag for a second. I looked around me with squinting eyes. I was in a room covered in dust and mold, beige and brown, with dark spots on the floor and walls, of what I can only imagine as dried blood. "Last chance, fancy pants," he said with a pitiful face. I've never been as scared as this, I thought. Do you have anesthetics?" I asked. "Would you like that?" he asked. I nodded as tears started flowing off my cheeks and mucus started dripping from my most likely red nose. "Please," I begged. The mystery man put his palm on his forehead. "Jeez, kid, you're not making it easy on me, are you? How about we call this whole thing off and let you go home?" "No," I shouted, wiping my tears. "I'm sorry for crying. I can do this. Just get on with it. I'll put you to sleep, alright? Just remember, you will never get this shit back. Capiche?" I nodded as he pulled out a small box and prepared a needle. After insertion, the world faded slowly as my eyelids got heavier. "I'm coming for you, Grandpa. Just wait." I opened my eyes to an excruciating pain with the mystery man and the owner holding onto my shoulders. "It's over, kid. You did good. Try not to waste the rest of your body in Alem. Lucky for you, where you're going, you won't even notice that it's gone," the mystery man said. I wanted to speak, but I couldn't. He gave me a mirror and said, "I'll give you a few minutes to clean yourself before you go." I took a look in the mirror. My chin, and pretty much everything beneath it, was covered in blood. I slowly unhinged my jaw with a pain that almost prohibited every bit of movement in the area beneath my nose. My eyes had dried up, for I had already accepted everything that was coming my way. Neither sweet nor bitter words will ever leave my mouth again. In the mirror, between my red-stained teeth, stood the absence of an organ that broke my ability to ever French kiss a girl, curse my grandpa, or tell my mom I love her. As I will leave Earth after a few minutes, with my bruised body, missing tongue, and an acute anemia, I decided to post this part via my cell phone before I left. I'll make sure to capture everything I can with my camera. Until we meet again. I'm going to miss you guys. Wish me luck, because I can use every bit of it. Today, a package arrived at my coffee shop's doorstep, containing the username and password to this account, together with a note. The note is from the boy that recently entered Alem through the gate of my pier. I didn't get his name at the time, but after reading the posts on this account, he seemed to go by Porter. I'm not very fond of the fact that the kid told all you people about everything that happened, as the existence of our kind should be kept a secret from most of you. Nevertheless, he provided no damning proof, so I guess there is no reason for me to worry. The package contained a camera, and Porter wished for me to tell you people about what is on it. I was hesitant at first, but I agree with the message he wants to pass on to all of you, so I might as well comply. I'll tell you the story, as Porter wanted me to tell you, with the help of a letter explaining his emotions at every minute of footage. I woke up in the same room my grandpa showed in the second clip he recorded. The first thing I did was examine my body, for the aches and pain I entered with were somehow gone. The bruises on my body were still there, but they didn't hurt me. I opened my mouth and tried to feel it, but it was still gone. To be honest, I was happy he didn't take an arm or a leg. That would have made things way more difficult for me. I opened my bag and took out my grandpa's gun. I had loaded it the day before. I squeezed the gun between my belt and waist on my backside. I suppose it's time to go, I thought, and made my way upstairs. The stairs were creaking with every step I took. When I reached the top, almost instantly, a voice called out to me. "Oh my, another visitor," she shouted. It was a blonde-haired girl with purple eyes, looking with excitement as she made a little hop into the air. "Shh, don't yell," I said. Wait. I touched the inside of my mouth again. My tongue was still missing, but I was speaking as I always did. In the midst of my confusion, the girl held my hands and started swinging them. "Oh my god, you're so young," she said. "Let me go," I said, getting pissed off by her hyped up mood. "Yes, I'm visiting, leave me alone please," I said, and made my way outside as she followed me, unfazed by my outburst. The dusty desert village, just as I had seen in the footage. The sky was dark, yet the town was lighted by some kind of lamps that I hadn't seen in my grandpa's recording. I walked up to one of the lamps, but as I got closer, they weren't lamps at all. It was just light floating in the air. I tried to touch it, but I couldn't, as my hand just moved through it. "Hey everyone, we got a new visitor. He doesn't look old at all," the girl yelled throughout the village. I gave an expression of annoyance, but again, she didn't seem to care. Before I knew it, I was surrounded by the people of the village who started to touch my body whilst asking questions again and again without me being able to answer one of them. "Get off of me," I yelled, calming them down a bit. Just as my grandpa's video, the crowd was filled with, at first glance, normal people. The only difference were the odd hair and the eye colors. "Where am I?" I asked, looking at the one that stood closest to me, being the blonde-haired, purple-eyed girl that called upon the crowd. "Ari Village, Midwest Alem," she said. Well, that doesn't help me at all, I thought. What country?" I asked. The girl and I both stared at each other in confusion for a bit, until a hand reached for my wrist and pulled me into the crowd. "Leave him alone," he told the crowd with a grumpy voice as we moved through the horde of people. I took a look behind me and felt my backpack bump into someone, the force of the hit making him fall as people caught him just before he reached the ground. The man pulled me inside a house and shut the door. "Sorry for all the commotion. They get pretty excited when they see a new human, especially such a young one," he said, pulling a chair for me, gesturing me to sit. I put my backpack on the ground and sat down in a less than comfortable position as I felt the tip of my gun press against my bum. "Who are you exactly?" I asked. "I'm what they would call the village elder," he said. But after scanning him for a few seconds, I noticed that he didn't look a year over 25. "Where am I exactly?" I continued. "Far from home. Very far," he said. "Can't be that far," I said. "The people still speak English." "They don't," he said, causing a 10-second silence to erupt. What language do you think they were just talking to me in? In the language we are speaking right now," I said, thinking, do they not realize that this is English? He stood up and started looking for something in the room next to the one I was sitting in. "Ah, here it is," he said after a minute of searching, showing me a handheld mirror about the size of my head. "Take a look at it," he said. I grabbed the mirror, but my distrust stopped my hand as I was about to look into it. "You first," I said. He swiftly grabbed it and took a look at it, after which he turned it to me so fast it made me flinch. "Don't worry, it's just a mirror, I swear," he said. Trusting his words, I looked at myself in the mirror, but it really was just a mirror as far as I could tell. "Neither we nor you are speaking English right now," he said. "Try speaking into the mirror." "What do you mean?" I said, looking in the mirror. "I don't get it." "Try again. Focus on your mouth," he said. "Are you sure you're not the village's goofball?" "What?" I thought. "Are you?" I said, looking at my mouth in the mirror. "Ah. Oh. E. I." My mouth isn't moving the way it should, I thought, while I kept trying. "Oh," I said, but my lips didn't make a round hole. The man started to laugh. "What's going on?" I asked. "As I said, you're not speaking English. Weren't you wondering why you could speak with no tongue?" "Then, how are we communicating?" I asked. "You're in Alum now, kid. Everyone here switches to Sheolish, the default language." "Sheolish?" I said with a confused tone. "It's the language every free soul knows from birth. Most humans only get to speak it after their death. You're pretty lucky to experience this. Didn't you ever think how the people would speak in heaven and hell? Well, there will be no English, Chinese, Spanish, or whatever. They'll all be speaking Sheolish." "I don't believe in heaven and hell," I said, looking him straight in the eyes as I put the mirror down in front of me. "Oh, well, alright. To each their own, I suppose. That's not a really common belief in this area," he said. The door opened with a loud smack. "It is where we come from," a voice shouted from behind me. My blood started to boil upon hearing that voice. That goddamn voice. The village elder saw the thirst for blood in my eyes. Upon noticing him looking at me, I collected my fury and turned around saying, "Grandpa, it's been so long." Shirtless, hair and chest full of sweaty hair, pants covered in sand and dust, a look of thirst in his eyes, both literally and figuratively. Yeah, it's my grandpa, alright. "How you've been, Porty? So, you're filming your own experience in Alien as well, eh?" he said, walking up to me. "I see the elder has already begun introducing you to this world." "Do you two know each other?" the elder asked. I nodded as my grandpa explained. "This little brat is the child of my daughter, sweet little Basil Porter." "You're like oil and water," the elder said. "Your grandkid doesn't seem nearly as eccentric as you were." "Yeah, this kid is more like his dad," my grandpa said. "Hey Porty, got some water for me?" I didn't say anything, for I was deep in thought, thinking about my next move. I could just shoot him right now, I thought. But with all these people around me, they might not like that at all, especially since they seem to know my grandpa pretty well. "Oi, Porter," my grandpa said, giving me a tap on the head. "Look in my bag, there should be a lot." He grabbed my cheek with his hands as I was about to pronounce the O. "Your tongue, eh?" he said. "Well, you won't really have to worry about that here, but it's going to suck back on Earth. At least it's healing well." He started digging through my bag, chugging a bottle of water as soon as he found one. My god, that's refreshing. Too bad it's already gone lukewarm. "What's this?" he asked, showing my non-see-through bottle. "Buttermilk," I said with a poker face. "Porter!" he shouted, grabbing the attention of the elder and every person in the mob that had gathered outside the house. "Porter, you're so sweet," he said, almost crying. "It's not for you," I said. "Don't drink it." His expression dropped tremendously. "Give me half," he started to bargain. "No," I said. "I brought that for myself. You can't have any." "I'm sorry. I just got excited for a bit. Really? Like buttermilk? Well, if you're planning on saving it, you should keep it cold before it spoils. You're right, I said. Is there some kind of refrigerator? I asked the elder. The elder looked at me with wide eyes and a smile. Refrigerator? He asked. Don't bother, Porty. Different place, different rules, Grandpa said. Where's Yuzdo? He asked the elder. Probably went home. He was working on some project the last time I saw him. Let's go, my grandpa said. With a mob of people, we walked throughout the village, stopping at the corner, the last house before a grand desert field that seemed to go nowhere. Inside the house, my eyes feasted on a mighty being. A dragon, I whispered to myself. Well, it was meant to look like a dragon. In actuality, it was a sculpture of a dragon, made out of the last thing I would imagine someone sculpting in this place: ice. Do you like it? Someone asked in a raspy voice, wearing a pair of small glasses with his blue hair in a ponytail. Yes, it looks amazing, I said. Rumors say a dragon has been spotted in the far north. How awesome is that? He asked, looking dreamy at his creation. Very, I said, still not used to all the wonders of this new world. Yeah. Spare me the fantasy talk, Yuzdo. Can you free some bottle for us? My grandpa asked, cutting straight to the room's mood. I would appreciate it if you asked me more kindly. Where are the bottles? He asked. My grandpa almost ripped the backpack off my back as he tried to give him the bottles. He walked to the corner of the room where a cloth bag lay, neatly folded. I'm borrowing this, if you don't mind, he said. Yuzdo just gave him a look, silent and stern, like an owner gives his dog when it misbehaves. One by one, Yuzdo took the bottles and placed them back again, until he got to the buttermilk bottle. Make that one extra cold, please, my grandpa said. You're not going to drink it, I said. Yeah, you'll like it more when it's really cold too. Yuzdo held the buttermilk in his hand for a few seconds longer. I didn't really understand what he was doing, but then I noticed. On the outside of the bottle, frost started to appear as the bottle started to make cracking sounds. What the fuck? I whispered, with my jaw almost touching the floor. Feast your eyes, kid, my grandpa said. Is this kid also from Earth? He asked, looking at my grandpa. Yeah, he's my grandkid. Listen, Porty, the people in this world all have some special ability they can use to an extent, like fire and water and such. But it's not only restricted to elements. I even saw someone make glass. How crazy is that? My grandpa said. I'm not going to lie. At that moment, I truly understood why my grandpa wanted to be here so much. What a world it was. Alem. It didn't justify his actions though. And so, my thoughts hadn't changed about him. I want you to meet someone else, my grandpa said, grabbing my bag, quickly walking out of the door like a kid who's about to go to the park. Before I could follow, Yuzdo grabbed my shoulder. Be careful, kid, he said, looking in my eyes with a look that was colder than his sculpture. I nodded and left his house. I took some water bottles for myself. I hope you don't mind, my grandpa said, showing me the cloth bag he filled. I didn't respond. Alright everyone, he shouted to the crowd. We're going farther east. I would appreciate it if you stop following us. The crowd shouted a bit and started scattering. Let's go, he said again. I knew exactly where we were going. I didn't want to meet this someone at all, but I remembered from his recordings that it was deep in the desert, the perfect place for me to shoot him. So, there we were, walking in the scorching desert, just the two of us. So, how do you like Alem? He asked. It's mesmerizing. Didn't I tell you? He said, while starting to laugh. For some reason, those blokes on Earth make it really difficult for us to get here. Some cunts they are, right? Huh, yeah, I said. That bastard gatekeeper even sent someone to kill me. He continued. My eyes twitched as I heard him say that. Luckily, my boss killed that idiot before he could kill me. Fucking loser reaped what he sowed. Who is this boss exactly? And what do you do for him? I asked hesitantly. I'm happy you asked. My boss is exactly like me. He just takes what he wants, he said, grabbing a bottle out of the cloth bag he was carrying. It was the buttermilk bottle. He opened the cap, and before he took a sip, he stopped and looked at me. You could have had half, you know? Shouldn't have been such a greedy cunt, he said as he chucked the bottle empty. Some sand had got into it anyway. Where was I? Oh yeah, my boss. Like I said, he takes what he wants, and the thing he wants is flesh. Excuse me? I said. He's got some kind of disease or something. He gets really weak if he doesn't cannibalize his own kind. It's pretty weird. I was baffled by his words, but he didn't stop talking for even a second, and just continued. So yeah, because I'm so popular, I'm really good at leading people to him so he can eat them. That's kind of what I've been doing this whole time to amuse myself. But his hunger is a lot, so every once in a while I have to figure out a way to get him a lot of people to eat. There is this one artist guy who trades like 10 of these people for a single human. He makes artwork out of human or something. It's an awesome deal if you ask me. You're a monster, I finally managed to say to his face. That's exactly what your dad said, he said, trembling my mind with the weight of his words clashing down from the high sky. What? I said silently. He started squinting his eyes and scratching his head. Oh, sorry, I got a headache for a bit. When you were a kid, he eventually continued. Back when I first started coming to this place, I wanted to snatch a nibble of your body so I could pass the gate. Your dad stopped me before I could. That fucking cunt. So eventually, I made a trap to lead him to Alem with some obvious clues. Once he figured everything out, he came to Alem. Me and my boss captured him and traded him to this artist I mentioned before. I couldn't breathe properly anymore. My eyes started to move from left to right rapidly. We were far enough. I was going to end this swiftly. But before I pulled my gun, I asked him, "How could you do all of this? Don't you feel any remorse for what you did to these people? My father, my little brother, your own daughter, for fuck's sake." Life has been really unfair to me, kid. The only way I can be happy, the only way I can be free, is if I treat others the same way. I do have to be honest. I didn't like hurting my grandson, nor my daughter. But your dad had it coming. He came closer, laid his hand on my shoulder, and whispered. He came to Alem to kill me. Just like you. My senses went on overload as I could feel every drop of blood flow through my body. I pushed him off of me and jumped a step back, drawing the sweat-covered revolver and aiming it at his naked chest. He put his hand and stump in the air, but I didn't give a single fuck. It's time, I thought, and pulled the trigger, shouting, "Goodbye and good riddance." My grandpa exploded into laughter as my hand exploded into bits and pieces, scattering fingers and blood throughout the desert. You idiot. Did you really think I would leave a gun in my room for you to find? I fell on the ground. You, I uttered through the pain. You're naive, Porty. Oh, so naive. But you do have guts, I'll give you that. I'm sure you went through a lot of trouble to get this far. But sadly, I'm the winner, he said as he pulled out a gun from his pocket. I pity you, Porter. So, instead of putting you through the same hell as your dad went, I'll just give you a swift and mostly painless death. That's fair, right? Fuck you, I said, holding what's left of my hand, trying to keep my mind together through the pain and desert heat. Yeah, fuck me. Tell your dad. I said, huh? He stopped as his eyes grew wide. He took a step back and vomited in the dry sand, sweating even more profusely than before. He took a look at me in disbelief, with his stomach acid dripping from his mouth and nose. No way, he said. It was finally my time to laugh. If only you weren't such a piece of shit. If only you didn't take everything you wanted. If only you knew that your grandson hated buttermilk. Then you might have suspected something, I said. But you didn't even want me to drink it. You told me it was for you, damn it, he said loudly. I did, because that was the only way I could guarantee you drinking it. Because I knew that you couldn't help yourself. That you couldn't help yourself taking something that didn't belong to you. What did you do to it? He cried out, vomiting one more time as his hands started to shake. Crushed cherry pits, I said. Cyanide, he whispered, standing up and aiming the gun at me. His arms were shaking, but at this distance, I'm sure it would hit. Well played, Porty, he said. I can accept this end. Ironically, I can live with this, I thought as I looked into the barrel of the gun. At that moment though, something happened we'd both forgotten about. It wasn't the gun, it was the sun, exploding in the sky, casting darkness upon the whole desert in an instant. I wanted to move, but not only had I let my guard down and relaxed my muscles, the shock of the sky made me freeze, making me think I had already died. Then, in the darkness, the shot of a gun casted a brief light as the bullet made its way towards my skull. A moment of silence occurred, after which the moon was birthed, lighting the desert enough for us to see. And both of us saw the monstrous being between us.
I can't let you both die, Mer. I'm sure you understand,
he said. I looked at his knee. He'd taken the bullet from me, so it was spinning on top of his skin, not penetrating even a millimeter into his flesh. Boss, my grandpa said, as he fell down and started shaking on the ground. The poison had spread fastly, for he had gone into a seizure. It had only taken a few more minutes before he died. I did it, I thought. The boss crouched next to me as his silk hair was touching the bloodstained sand.
Porter, right?
He asked. I took a look at his face. He wasn't nearly as scary as in the recordings. His expression was mellow, and his mouth looked normal. His pupils were wide and far from menacing. Yes, I said.
I assume you know what your grandpa did for me. Now that he's dead, I need you to do it,
he said. You want me to lure people to their death, so you may consume them? I asked as I saw my grandpa stop moving in the background, sending the tiniest amounts of dopamine through my brain in this dire moment.
Correct,
he answered. This was the only way I could survive, the only way I could live. But would I even want to live on like that? Of course not. So I had to play it smart. Yes, I'll work for you, I answered.
Are you sure?
He asked me. I was sure about one thing. I was going to get out of this place, alive, and never come back. I'm not going to be this monster slave. Never. Yes, I'm sure. I couldn't finish my words, for he had already seen through me, as his expression changed rapidly.
You're a bad liar,
he said with an ominous tone that echoed throughout the desert, shaking me to my core as his pupils turned tiny and his mouth expanded. My glands excreted ice-cold sweat as he pointed his pale finger at my nose, sending a shock to my body as my heart took its last pump. The night turned darker as the sounds got muted. Oh boy. Here I go, I thought. So, finally, I heard as I opened my eyes to a blurry vision. Hey, 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 wakey, wakey, sleepyhead, a man said. I tried to move my arms, but I couldn't. I looked around me and saw that I was strapped to some kind of wooden plank in a colorful room. What is this? Some kind of circus? I thought out loud. No, no, no. Don't be silly. This is my working space. I like vivid colors, you see. They help me think more artistically, the man said. Where am I? I asked. Don't worry about that, boy, he said as he grabbed my cheeks and took a look into my mouth. Missing tongue, missing hand. Not bad. I can make something beautiful out of you, that's for sure, he said happily. What do you mean? I asked. It's hard to explain. Here, let me show you, he said and started rolling something to me, cloaked with a white cloth. I've been told you know this masterpiece of mine. Hey, 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 ladies and gentlemen, take a look. Take a look at the masterful artworks of Jason, here for your eyes only, he started saying as he ran towards the drum set in the back of the room. He started rapidly drumming before he suddenly stopped and took the cloth off what was, I assumed to be, his artwork. The horror, the absolute horror that lay before my eyes. Had I not seen enough yet? In front of me lay a naked human, with every part of his body contorted, spinning in spirals and circles, like some kind of human cinnamon bun. His skin was as pale as snow and as smooth as could be, reflecting the dim light of the room. His head stood in the middle, but his hair covered every bit of his hanging face. Do you like it? He asked with a childish tone. It's disgusting, I said. Ugh, someone doesn't appreciate art. Besides, it's kinda rude talking about him like that. Wouldn't you agree? Why? I asked. He walked towards the middle of his artwork, shoved its hair to the side, and lifted its skull so I could take a look at its face. Don't worry, you'll be joining him very soon, he said. It took me a while to realize, for it had been so long since I had last seen him. But after seeing the birthmark on his chin, a movie of memories played in my mind. Come on, boy, say it with your chest, the man shouted. My eyes filled up as I tried again. I cried, like I cried the moment I was born. The man hurried to a box of tissues and started wiping my tears. Yeah, it's your daddy, stop crying, he said with a sad expression as he dried my face. I collected some saliva and spit it at his face. You bastard, I yelled through the room. Come on now, no need to be mean, he said as he moped. Fuck you, I said silently. I usually don't do anesthetics, but I wanted to make an exception for you. But if you keep this up, I'll change my mind, he said. I didn't say anything. I just watched my teardrops hit the floor as my head hung low, defeated as could be. Oh, come on, kid, he said. How about I do you a favor? Is there something you want? He asked. I want to go home, I responded. Anything else maybe? I got some candy if you want, he said with a smile. Looking down on the ground, I noticed the camera was still strapped to my chest. I thought I would have some great memories of my trip to Alem. How wrong I turned out to be. I want you to send this device on my chest to someone, I said. Of course. Where do you want me to send it? Earth, I said. Geez, kid, the candy is really tasty, you know. You sure you don't want that? Please, do me this one favor." He sighed. "Sure, whatever you want, sweetie. And help me write a note to send as well." "Hell no. One favor, kid. Don't push your luck," he said. I already understood what this guy lived for, so I used that to persuade him. It'll be art," I said. His eyes started gleaming. The camera cut to black after this point, but I found another recording on the camera of what happened next. Hey, Mr. Coffee Shop owner. Porter here wanted me to send you this thing he calls a camera. So, here it is. I thought that, before I send it, I should add my creation as well. So, feast your eyes on Magna Corporis Humani. Porter. The man said as he showed me what had become of the kid. He stood naked in a spread eagle position, mounted on a silver pole. His chest was open, and his veins were outside of his body. Like the branches of a tree, they stood there, frozen in the air. His nerves as well, thinly stretched from his cut back like a blunt porcupine. His skin absent, showing every muscle on his body. His face in a permanent smile, smiling to the camera, eerily. But his eyes, I'm guessing the artist could do nothing to change his eyes. Because, although open, they looked down on the ground, portraying pure sadness. He had seen many things at such a young age, and met a fate as unfair and cruel as they come. His eyes cried out a single word. Why? In the middle of his chest, his heart, still beating. Although horrifying, heinous, and outright inhumane, I would be lying if it wasn't absolutely beautiful. God has blessed the humans with a body that shines its perfection through every inch of it. Let this be a lesson to all of you. There is a saying that goes, before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves. Although a cliché, there are a few words wiser. If your journey includes a trip to Elim though, remember that merely dying could be a luxury you might not be granted. Stay where you were made to stay. Anywhere but Elim. Listen to your conscience and those wiser than you. For Porter was warned many times, but was too stubborn to heed, blinded by his own desires. From the bottom of my heart, I wish that you make the right choices this decennium and for the rest of your life. Porter was no special person. In essence, he was just like you. We all have our troubles, some bigger than others, and our happiness depends on our way of dealing with them. So, act wisely and help those around you who struggle to an extent. They can't deal without you. But above else, avoid Elim and those that come from there. For there is a reason why you humans dubbed us demons.
Загорание 2 градусов диодов, в центре не горят, метраж погасла. Выдаю рут на торможение. Есть 2 градуса диода. Метраж не горят, метраж погасла и на расход.
Ops 3, do you read? Ops 3, do you read? I launched myself for the radio receiver and jerked up to the mouthpiece. I wiped away the film of sweat from my forehead before replying. Receiving. My throat was tight with a lump the size of a golf ball. It's good to hear your voice, comrade. You too. How are you doing? Leaning towards the porthole, I stared out into the cold void, hoping to catch some glimpse of the Soyuz capsule somewhere out in the twinkling stars. All systems great. Amazing view of the Pacific right now. Have you managed to reach ground control yet? Comms are still down because of the solar flares, I guess. Should be back up in a couple of hours. I hope so. The lump in my throat was getting bigger, pressing against the wall of my windpipe. I swallowed, trying to make the room for my next words. I get worried up here on my own. Only 7 days to go now, Boris. I'm sure you can last that long. I'll see you then. I can't wait until you get here. Talk to you soon. I put down the mouthpiece and turned back to the porthole, pressing my eyes into the great blackness, to the divine curve of the Earth's glowing horizon. Without flight engineer Solobov, the station seemed very empty indeed. It was 100 cubic meters of beeping radios and often blaring alarms, but silence slid beneath these thin distractions, an ever-present threat. Soon enough, I would tune out all the noise and fall into a state of uncomfortable, clutching reticence. I sighed uncomfortably, suddenly extremely self-aware, and tore back from the porthole. Pulling myself through the stale air, I headed for the living area. The sliding door, which led to the cramped toilet compartment, was half open, and it squealed as I pushed it into the closed position, the sudden noise making me cringe. The half-hearted chuckle that spilled from my lips was a force of habit. There was no one else on the station to hear it. I had no appetite for the generic meat in my food storage cupboard. Truth be told, I hadn't eaten more than a packet of dried apricots, a couple of crackers, and some meat spread in the last 2 days. If the people back on the ground knew how little I had eaten, they would have had me on the Soyuz and heading for re-entry in the blink of an eye. If I hadn't been out of contact with them, I might have even considered telling them, just to get off. With no appetite, I decided to call it a day. It was then a simple matter of flicking off the main cabin lights, crawling into the restraints of my sleeping compartment, and praying that the station wouldn't fall apart while I was asleep. It was warm. Uncomfortably warm. The fabric of the sleeping bag clung to my skin, slick with sweat. I fumbled with the zip, my fingers slipping on the cold metal. The air in the capsule was like tar, and I swam through it with an uncomfortable lethargy. The thermometer displayed a temperature of 19.8 degrees Celsius, exactly as it had the day before, and the day before that. That's gotta be a mistake. I tapped the screen, as if that would somehow make the display change. But it just ended up leaving a sticky finger mark on the glowing green glass. Either way, I needed a shower. I used the back of my forearm to clean off my forehead, and sighed. This could wait. It was probably just another sensor problem that I wouldn't be qualified to fix. The whole place was probably only ever one fault from depressurizing and spiraling back down to earth, as brittle as a feather. I couldn't focus on my problems while I briskly rubbed my skin clean with the harsh soap bar. Once I was clean and suitably refreshed, I turned the knob and the last bubble of water floated gently out of the nozzle. With the sound of rushing water gone, I became aware of the noises of the station again. In particular, a muffled voice. Shit! I banged my head on the shower cubicle roof as I attempted to spin myself around and climb out the door. It left a mark on the gray plastic. Not wanting to miss whoever was on the radio, I ignored the stinging pain and pulled myself naked across the space station, toweling myself as I went. Ops 3, do you read? Ops 3, do you read? Receiving Soyuz 21. Breathlessly, I muttered into the mouthpiece. I had almost given up on you. Sorry, I was showering. Well, I'm glad I reached you. I was beginning to think we were alone up here, comrade. At least you're not the only one on the Soyuz. I'm all alone out here on Salyut. Huh, you are lucky, my friend. Flight engineer Rodestensky is starting to drive me crazy. Only 6 more days to go. For you, maybe. I have my whole mission to complete. I gave a sympathetic chuckle. I sympathized with Commander Zudov. I truly did. Ever since my partner, flight engineer Zolobov, had got himself a ticket home by accidentally chopping off 3 of his fingers in the airlock door, Zudov had managed to keep my spirits up. He had managed to keep me working. He had managed to keep me hopeful. Zudov was a great man. He would be hailed as a hero back home when his mission was finished. I was sure. How are you doing anyway? It's warm. It's too warm up here. I'm not sure how it can be so hot inside, yet so cold outside. Hot? Zudov was audibly alarmed. What's your thermometer reading? 19.8 as always. It's probably a sensor problem. Don't worry. Boris. It's fine, Commander. Honestly, I'm only slightly too hot. A couple of degrees maybe. Well, you radio me straight away if it gets any hotter. Don't worry. He would worry. I could tell by the sound of his voice. Well then, I must leave you. See you soon, my friend. 6 days to go, I confirmed, before clipping the mouthpiece back into position on the radio set. The rest of the day was a constant battle against heat. Communication with the ground was still out because of the solar flares, so I attempted to remedy the problem myself by hand. That started with the simple task of running diagnostic programs on the central computer. But after it denied that there was any problems whatsoever, I hit a brick wall. My mind ran, dredging up hundreds of semi-random memories of endless technical documents and cosmonaut manuals. The black diagrams and minute labels all seemed to melt, twisting into impossible shapes, non-Euclidean planes that boggled my mind. I couldn't quite think in the straight lines required for a task like this at the moment. In the heat, everything span and spiraled in and out in my mind's eye. Concentration, it was safe to say, was not high. In my head, I was back in Zolobov's last day with me on the station. It was hotter than I remembered in a feverish flashback. Zolobov's brow glistened as he climbed down, extending his massive frame out of the tiny airlock. He gave a relieved gasp, glad to finally move his limbs without slamming them against the walls. I watched him from my seat by the main control console, my eyes aching from looking at the monochrome screen for several hours. I called out something to him, not in control of my own actions or speech. Whatever it was, for it was muted in my memory, overshadowed by what came next, made him turn. As he did, he placed one hand on the metal rim of the airlock to keep himself steady. Zolobov replied with a chuckle in an equally muted reply. His lips were blurred in my flashback. Indeed, the entire man's outline was slightly fuzzy in my memory, but the lack of clarity was most noticeable around his face. He was now just an out-of-focus photograph in the dark recesses of my cortexes. We finished talking, and Zolobov reached up for the handle on the hatch. He turned back to face me, just as he pulled, and brought down the sharp blade of metal. It dropped onto his fingers with a sickening. The jarring blow shook me out of my recollection, jerking my head up into an upright position. I gasped for air, and my head instinctively turned to the scene of the accident. There was still a small blood smear down the side of the hatch. Had the noise of metal hitting metal that was still echoing in my ears been real? Or was it just part of the memory? In my heat-addled state, it was hard to tell. The thermometer was still reading 19.8. I shook myself out of the odd stupor, which sent hundreds of tiny sweat droplets floating across the cabin. The armpits of my top were damp, as was all down my back and crotch area. The temperature must be rising. There it was again. Despite the heat, the sound sent chills down my spine. In any case, I knew it was just space junk or the metal expanding. But it was unsettling enough for me to give the capsule a nervous once-over, before returning to my previous train of thought. Soyuz 21, do you read? I picked up the radio microphone, still distracted by the glare of the main console, where the display still read 19.8 degrees Celsius.
Receiving Ops 3.
Any contact with ground yet, Commander? I need to get a fix on this thermostat problem.
Negative, Boris. Still nothing. Is it getting worse?
I can cope, but if it persists for 2 or 3 days... I trailed off, putting down the receiver to wipe my forehead again. I could just see my reflection in the edge of the porthole, and he looked very sweaty indeed. White salt crystals stuck to my forearm in the rapidly drying sweat.
Well, we'll keep trying. It'll be fixed in a couple hours more. I'm sure of it.
I hope so, or I'll have to take another shower.
You're still getting a reading of 19.8?
Zudov's voice carried a note of apprehension in it, even over the airwaves. Afraid so.
Don't worry, we'll be back in contact with the ground soon, and they'll know what to do. I'm sure it's just a sensor problem, something minor like that. Speak to you soon, my friend, and drink plenty of water.
I will, don't worry. I laughed. That man was acting like my mother. With Zudov no better equipped to solve the problem than I was, I relented to a policy of acceptance to the problem. If I couldn't solve it, at least I could cope with it. The heat reduced my appetite even further. But I headed to the kitchen in hope of forcing down some crackers and water. I rifled through the storage cupboards, looking for something that wouldn't turn my stomach, and at the lack of crackers, eventually settled on a nondescript dried beef I found in one of the white packets. It reeked of meat, an acrid, pungent stink which set my abdomen churning, but I swallowed it nonetheless. The dried beef scent clung to the kitchen walls even after I finished the package. My mouth was now even drier, so I mixed up some of the powdered orange juice. It tasted nothing like orange. In fact, it was some cocktail of harsh chemicals, but it washed away the salty tang of the beef. I wiped my mouth and discarded the plastic container, sending it trailing small globules of sticky orange liquid across the air. After my meal, a heavy weight was sitting on my stomach. It slushed around in the chasms of my lower body as I moved around the station, warm and stinging. I had to clamp my throat shut to stop myself from throwing up on several occasions. The day passed with an uncomfortable malaise that made the discomfort in my stomach and head even worse. I watched the hours tick away on the main console clock as I made my measurements, recordings of the sun or of the box of crystals that grew in the science lab area of the station. Eventually, I could almost take the drudgery no longer. Every surface in the station was covered in sweaty palm prints by the time the day was done, and my hair was nearly sodden. There was no way I could sleep in the heat like this. When I couldn't stand the treacle consistency of waking consciousness for a minute longer, I relented to the sleeping pills. They sat in a tiny white bottle in the very back of the medicine compartment, and at the very start of the mission, I had sworn never to take them. Unfortunately, today, there was no other option. Dimming the station lights and crawling into the hot confines of my sleeping bag, I looked at the pale white pills in my palm. They had a slight scent of mint to them. In one decisive movement, I quashed all hesitation, all internal protest, closed my eyes, and swallowed. I was out, like a light. The first thing I noticed when I woke up was the temperature. A gentle cold breeze lapped around my face, probably emanating from the air pumps that whirred gently on the edges of my earshot. My watch, set to Alma at a time from my lunch at Baikonur, warned me I had been asleep for only 3 hours. The station was still dark as I slid open the sleeping compartment door, although I was thankful for the respite in the heat and bright light. I stretched, cracking the vertebrae in my back. Here in the cool dark, I no longer felt feverish or nauseous, just tired. Slowly, as my eyes adjusted, I pulled myself over towards the radio set and considered calling Soyuz 21. The air still tasted stale. The tang of sweet and dried beef hung in it even after it was recycled hundreds of times through endless filters and pumps. Even so, there was a certain calm to the station with the lights off and the temperature down. I looked out the porthole, and even the frigid depths of the universe seemed less inhospitable. There was a gentle navy tinge to the infinite blackness, perhaps, and the glow of the stars seemed less harsh. This, along with the weightlessness and the gentle purr of the air pumps, gave the whole scene a dreamlike quality. As if I was safely cocooned in a great white chrysalis that floated through the spiraling arms of far-off galaxies, or across the peaks and valleys of great sparking nebula. I could go wherever I wanted in this dream space, and I was safe wherever I went. All of that came to an end with a noise. A clatter, movement, almost imperceptible, in the corner of my right eye. I was instantly torn from my trance and tossed back cruelly into the physical realm. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled to attention as I turned slowly to face the source of the noise behind me. Nothing. Perhaps I had been imagining it after all. Things tend not to clatter in microgravity. They float and drift heedlessly, but never clatter. So it stands to reason it had simply been my mind playing tricks on me, manifesting noise where there was none. After all, nothing in the section of the station showed any sign of movement. Nervously gazing around the cabin, I shook my head in disapproval of the power of my own imagination, and my initial foolishness for believing it. Nothing on the station could have made such a noise. In an attempt to settle myself again, I swam over to the main console and checked the thermometer, reading 19.8, just as I was expecting. Either the problem had fixed itself and the temperature control had automatically reduced the station back to 19.8 degrees, or the problem was still there, but it was with the thermometer and not in fact the temperature control system. Either way, I was relieved not to be doused in sweat any longer. I had quickly resigned myself to the fact I wouldn't get any more sleep for a while. So, with a defeated sigh, I flicked on the switch for the main cabin lights. They blinked on, one by one, with a deep guttural hum, which was soon lost in the orchestra of other quiet whirs and buzzes. The light hit my pupils with a ferocious intensity, and I had to close my eyes to shield them. I had become adjusted to the comfortable dark, and my eyes were shocked by this new and frightening stimulus. The next order of business was to put some clothes on. In my sleeping underwear, I was beginning to feel a slight chill, and I would be a lot more comfortable in something warmer. Soyuz 21, do you read? I pulled up the zip on my jumpsuit as I spoke. After there was no answer, I leaned closer towards the radio mouthpiece, licked my lips slightly to moisten them, and tried again. Soyuz 21, do you read?
Receiving, comrade. What can I do for you?
The faint reply came. It was good to hear the voice of Commander Zudov again. Just wanted to tell you that the sensor problem is all cleared up, Commander. We're back at usual temperature.
That's brilliant.
Zudov was clearly relieved.
I was worried for a minute there. How did you fix it?
I breathed heavily, trying to form a response. The pause must have lasted a good second or two, because Zudov transmitted again.
Boris, are you there? How did you fix the temperature problem?
I didn't do anything, I decided on eventually. Just went away on its own. Zudov wasn't pleased. Clearly. I'm glad it's back to normal again.
Well, yes, so am I. I'll talk to you soon.
Zudov's voice was slightly frosty in this act of dismissal. I look forward to it. The radio crackled with static before falling silent completely. I replaced the microphone and pushed back away from the set towards the main console with the intent of once again checking the temperature. I gave an unconvincing laugh when I saw it was still stuck at 19.8. This was becoming my new obsession. With the temperature back to normal and the pain in my stomach gone, I was convinced I'll be able to make a better job diagnosing the problem with the heating control. Unfortunately, this wasn't the case, and I managed to spend several hours once again, vainly trying to plow my way through hundreds of wiring cases and circuit boards. Eventually though, my frontal cortex began to throb from the sheer mental exertion of the work. It was an acute pressure that punched up my brainstem, across my scalp and out my eye sockets. At one point, it became so bad, I had to let go of the manual I was reading to massage my forehead, in fear my skull would explode outwards. My vision blurred, bright red and blue patterns scarring themselves across my retinas like sheet lightning. Pins and needles crawled up my legs and arms, starting in just the extremities, then soaking upwards and inwards across my thighs and forearms. There was a rushing in my ears that drowned out most other sounds. But I just heard an odd, drawn-out croak on the edge of my audible range. It took a few seconds for me to realize that the noise was sliding from my own wide-open jaws. The pain was unbearable. Every second, I felt like I was about to drown in a sea of swirling fractals. Like the dam in my mind was going to shatter open, and my entire consciousness was going to be washed away by a flood of jarring flashes. With numb hands, I flung myself for my sleeping compartment. Any second now, I knew I would pass out from the searing heat in my head, and I wanted to be in my sleeping bag when it happened, so I didn't float around the capsule while I was out. I could barely see by the time I was in the sleeping bag, and as I fumbled for the restraints, I went. My face split apart and melt, exposing a bare skull, hard bone peeling back like warm butter. From the chasms in front of my head, a blinding light spilled out. Heat splashing across my head. More fractures opened across my temples and the back of my scalp beneath my hair. I could see my own brain, separating into regular sections like a gelatinous white clementine. Or at least, that's what it felt like. The pain was too much. I screwed close my eyes, and my mind shut down. The banging in my head had subsided from the feverish dance of a several hundred-strong warrior tribe in the midst of a ferocious and primal ritual to the distant crackle of thunder above a darkened grassland, accompanied by the gentle crackle of rain. With some trepidation, I pulled at my sleeping bag and climbed out, waiting for the pain to return. But as my sweaty fingers played around the door handle, the fear subsided, and I gingerly slid open the door and floated out into the dark station. The main lights were off, casting the living area and the flight deck into an uncomfortable darkness, thick as honey and seeping from every joint of the spaceship walls. It was split only by the bright neon of the station clock and the main console, which sliced through the vicious black with beams of gentle, sharp green rays bouncing off the walls and battling the darkness for control of the spaces above my head and below my feet. Another creak yawned through the capsule as I pulled myself out to the flight deck, towards the radio. It still sent shivers down my spine, despite the fact that I knew it was just the metal contracting due to a drop in temperature. Soyuz 21, do you read?
Receiving Ops 3.
The man on the other end of the radio wasn't Commander Zudov, and I hesitated when I recognized Flight Engineer Rostefensky's dry rasp. How is it going over there, Flight Engineer? I didn't like Rostefensky. It wasn't that he was particularly unpleasant. In fact, he had been most amicable whenever I talked to him. It wasn't even his rough voice, like sandpaper in my ears. It was his quiet lack of engagement with not only the mission, but the whole of space. He always seemed distant, far, far away. Not like Zudov, who was only ever as far as the radio speakers.
All is fine, comrade.
Is Commander Zudov there?
He's getting some sleep at the moment.
Have you had any contact with the ground yet?
Sorry?
Have the problems with the solar flares died down? You've reached ground on the radio communication network?
Oh, yes, the solar flares, of course. No, we're still unable to reach them.
Right. Well, can you keep trying?
Yes, of course. It's our top priority.
Okay. Thank you. I hesitated before closing with my usual comment to Zudov. See you in 4 days.
I suppose so.
Rostefensky was distant, almost uninterested by the entire conversation. The radio went silent, leaving me with just the hiss of dead air, which ripped gently off the skin of the capsule, so it sounded like it was coming from every corner of the spacecraft at once. I flicked off the radio and tossed down the mouthpiece, watching it float on its coil for a few seconds, before heading away to the shower compartment. 4 days. That's what I keep telling myself as I sat at the main console, flicking slowly through diagnostic programs, the bright green of the screen washing over the rest of the module, I had kept the lights off for now, just because it was much more comfortable in the dark. With the bright lights constantly in my face, I could hardly concentrate. 4 more days. The sentence fragment that escaped my mouth was a surprise even to me. It was next to silent, and if I hadn't been completely alone up here, I would have dismissed it as a background noise. I hadn't ever been one to talk to myself, and I was determined not to start now. My palms, still damp from the shower, had left prints where I had been clutching the armrest of the seat, and with a start, I realized my hands had been clenched just a few seconds ago tightly around the plastic. Just 4 more days. There was something off in the cabin. I could just feel it now. The equilibrium was off. Something had been moved in the corner of my eye. Swirling around, I scanned the living area, suddenly aware of a slight change in the capsule. Once you live in space for long enough, you become accustomed to every tiny detail. Even the slightest differences is like a blaring air raid siren. The medical cupboard was open, I realized. It was only slightly ajar, maybe just wide enough for me to fit my hand into. But it was noticeable enough for me to catch it on my second glance. How had it got open? I thought for a second, just floating silently, staring at the open cupboard. It had a sliding door, so it wasn't something that could just drift open with a draft. Not that there was one up here. How long had it been like that? It was impossible to tell. I finally willed my body into action, done with quietly staring, and crossed over to the cupboard. Perhaps I had left it open when I got the sleeping pills out last night. My train of thought faltered. Had it been last night, or the night before, that I had taken the pills? I couldn't remember properly. Nothing was in chronological order. I slid open the cupboard fully and looked around. Nothing seemed out of place. Nothing had moved. The sleeping pills were still politely hidden behind bandages and unlabeled vitamin tablets, keeping up with the fiction that I never used them, that I could get to sleep on my own.
Ops 3.
I was asleep by the time Zurov called on the radio. My eyes barely opened more than a slit.
Ops 3, do you read?
I read you, comrade.
How are you doing up there? Are you well?
I must have hesitated for a second too long, because Zurov was suddenly nervous.
What happened?
He demanded before I could speak. Nothing. I'm fine.
Don't lie to me, Commander. I can tell something is wrong.
I sighed audibly, then immediately regretted it. That would be only more confirmation to Zurov about my state of mind.
Commander Volinov?
I've been having sleep problems.
Sleep problems? That's normal, so I hear. Weren't you briefed on that?
I took the pills. The sleeping pills.
You took them?
Yes, they worked fine. We had been instructed back in Sholkova 14, the cosmonaut training facility, to not take the pills unless it was absolutely necessary, and under no circumstances take more than 4 at a time.
That's it? Just taking sleeping pills?
No, there's... I hesitated again. This time, my voice was caught on the saliva on the edge of my windpipe. There's something else. My memory's getting fuzzy sometimes.
What do you mean?
I can't remember things properly. Today, I found a cupboard open, and I don't remember opening it. There was nothing but silence for nearly 30 seconds. I thought Zurov had abandoned me.
Okay, look, I have to go. I have to check our oxygen filters. I'll talk to you soon.
Zurov was obviously distracted, and over the crackle of interference, I could hear a faint muttering. Right, I'll see you in 4 days. The sun was just slipping through the blue band of Earth's atmosphere as I took a quick glance from the flight deck porthole. It was almost fully extinguished, but long tails of light flared up through the dark, the last swan song of the soon-to-be-gone star. Sleep is a very loose term for what I had that night. I climbed in the sleeping compartment and stared at the wall. At some nondescript time, I fell into a semi-aware, semi-unconscious state. Not sleep, but somewhere in between, where my mind wandered. I was awake, again in the loosest sense of the word, by another thermal. Again in the loosest sense of the word, by another thermal ping. There was the faint taste of vomit and chemicals on the back of my throat. My eyes were watering. Thick streams of salty tears ran down my face and soaked into the neck of my sleep shirt. I didn't remember taking sleeping pills, but I couldn't deny the artificial mint that still hung in my mouth and nasal cavity. It could only belong to the pills. I hadn't eaten anything in days, and certainly not anything mint flavored. With a groan, I probed the very edges of my sleeping bag and felt the strain in my muscles. They were tense and taut. It took some effort to get them to move, as with every slightest adjustment of my limbs came the sting of built-up lactic acid. The air in the sleeping compartment was stale, old. It felt like it had been through my lungs at least 10 times before, and it hung around me with a dreadful stillness. As I pulled myself from the sleeping bag, I could still smell the musk of my skin and my sweat. Everything reeked of it. Everything reeked of me. I opened the door, and my heart stopped. It stopped pumping, warm blood turning cold in my veins, stationary. The contents of my stomach turned to ice, a great slush of freezing water that weighed down on my body and digestive system. If only figuratively, thousands of goosebumps rippled across my bare arms and legs. The nerves in my skin suddenly several hundred degrees below zero. Black powder floated in a small cloud in the center of the living space. It looked for all the world like a nebula gone dark. Hundreds of tiny swirling peaks and troughs made of an infinite number of black pinpricks. Lord, I breathed disbelievingly. The carbon filter spanned at the center of it all, glinting dangerously and disgorging more trails of carbon powder as it turned seemingly randomly through its cloud. How had it got there? How the fuck had it got there? Good Lord, I repeated as I swam towards the cloud. I reached out, extending my hand through the dust and clamping it around the filter. It was a small metal box about the size of a paperback book, with an opening at one end where the carbon was leaking from. The filter usually sat deep within the wearing mass of the air filtration system. There was an access panel used to change it in the flight deck, and my eyes immediately flicked up towards it when I remembered its location. Sure enough, it hung open. Soyuz 21! Soyuz 21! My voice into the radio was barely more than a whisper. In my head, my mind screamed, trying to drown out the uncertain knowledge I had gained since waking up. I was looking for an explanation. Any explanation. Perhaps there had been some micro-debris impacts that had shook the filter loose. I hadn't felt anything. But then I wouldn't have if I had taken the sleeping pills. Perhaps there had been a pressure malfunction, and that had blown the access panel open and the filter out. Perhaps. There were so many possibilities, but no answers.
Receiving Ops 3.
Comrade, Vyacheslav. I used Surov's first name in my strange state of shock, trying to connect with him across the void, across the great gap. I think there's... I choked up, looking at the open access panel and the filter, which I had left floating by it. When my throat cleared, my voice was barely a whisper. There's something wrong, comrade. There's something very, very wrong.
Commander Volinov, what is the problem?
Surov was cold. I could hear a strange silence as his voice echoed away around his capsule. I think... I couldn't speak. I couldn't say a single word. How could I explain? I decided to keep it simple, to ignore the terrifying implications of what had happened, to keep what I said to facts and nothing more. There is a problem with the air filtrating system.
What kind of problem, Ops 3?
One of the carbon filters fell out, or got knocked out, or... There, I trailed off. After that point, the facts did not serve me very well. There was nothing I could say for certain.
Do you think it's fixable?
Of course it's fixable, but that's not the point.
Say again, Ops 3.
I need you to contact Ground Soyuz, please, as fast as you can.
I can't do that, comrade. The long-range communications are still out because of the solar flares.
Okay. Thank you, Commander. See you in 3 days. I was cold. My spine was chilled with a sharp tingle of nerves. Sudov was never this businesslike, never this disinterested, and it scared me even more than the problem with the carbon filter. If I could have seen him, I felt like he would not have batted an eyelid when I told him about it. I was on my own, it seemed. Not even the comfort of my old friend on the other end of the radio. With Zurov in his current mood, I felt like talking to him any longer would be pointless. I began to rationalize in my head, and the primal spasms of fear inside my head began to die down, comforted by warm and concrete logic. Nothing to fear. I had nothing to fear. I needed something to calm my nerves. We weren't allowed alcohol aboard the station, of course, but I was pretty sure there were some anxiety pills in the medicine cabinet. Pills. It was always pills. They were in another white bottle, marked with black text. They tasted like chalk, no artificial mint this time. As I felt the large lumps slide down my throat, my heart rate began to slow. Maybe half an hour passed before I began to really feel the effects. I could sense my heart beating heavily and slowly in my chest. Each thump further away from the last, but heavier, the mass of muscle and veins straining to release itself from the confines of my fleshy body. Time was slowing down as I watched the sun slowly creep up across the side of the earth. The names of all the pills and tablets I had been taking began to run through my head. Aminoglutaric acid, atenolol, Decaris, Grandaxin, Oletronine. The list stretched on and on. The names didn't mean anything, just odd foreign words that were a problem to pronounce, and even a bigger problem to spell. There was a small bit of sweat forming on my forehead. I could feel it just above my left eye. There were others, and I'm sure they rippled each time my heart gave another thump. Nothing now but the sound of my heartbeat, and the porthole in front of me. My vision began to focus inwards, the edges blurring out. I was very close to the glass now, despite the fact I hadn't moved an inch. My field of view as rapidly zooming in on the geometric curve of the earth, as it was caressed by dark clouds. Everything else had passed out of my view. Now, just a stretched and blurred mass on the edges of my vision. I was through the glass, and now looking at the vast face of the earth as it turned seductively into the light of the sun. That great, scorched ball of searing heat. My journey down was starting to speed up, still slow at first. I barely surpassed the speed of Salyut's orbit, but soon my acceleration brought me up to greater speeds. The blue planet loomed up in front of me, and I was falling into its great yawning maw. The void whipped past me. As my speed reached unimaginable levels, the atmosphere was beginning to glow around my vision, burning first yellow, then white hot. Clouds parted, and the patchwork green of the country sped towards me, seconds from impact. Jerking awake, I was pulled from my hallucination by the heavy beating of my heart. The pearl of sweat on my forehead had evaporated, leaving just a tiny white deposit of salt crystals. I was fine. I was still here. Just a slight dizziness remained from my hallucination. I needed a drink, I decided. I needed a drink and something to eat. My mouth felt like it was full of rock salt, and I really needed to wash that out. I grabbed a water bottle and started to drink the rubber-tinged water as I rooted through the cupboards and cabinets, trying to find some food that would be inoffensive to my stomach. Beef stew, it seemed, was the best choice. It came in a small tin that didn't require heating. Ripping off the lid of the can, a small blob of brown stew was dislodged from inside, and I watched it spiral across the kitchen. It slammed into the side of one of the kitchen cabinets with a violent splat, leaving a dark brown smudge. Sitting at the flight console, I tried to run the diagnostic program. I wanted to find out what the filter had blown out, and why the alarm hadn't gone off. Lines of cloth flickered down the screen, repeating over and over again as I tried to connect the diagnostic system. I could hear the memory disks whirring loudly as they strained to figure out what the sensors were doing. The computer insisted nothing was wrong. No alarms had been reported, no problems detected, nothing. It was as if nothing had happened. The diagnostic finished and flashed up the results. 0 errors found. I slammed the side of the screen with my fist, and it flickered before I tore myself out of the console chair and headed back to the living area. I was starting to get jittery. The air was cold, or at least it felt like it. The whole incident had given me an uncomfortable feeling about the station, and the cocktail of pills didn't help. My skin crawled just thinking about it. The small noises, the beeps and thumps, the hiss of air pumps and groan of metal. I noticed every single one now. Goosebumps rippled across my skin every time I heard something even slightly out of place. I was a wreck by the time 2 hours had passed. The cumulative sum of every single tiny rattle or creak had set my teeth grating and shredded my nerves. I was totally prepared for the station to start plummeting back towards the earth at any second. Every time the filter system gave a hiss, I was convinced a leak had sprung, and I was going to be sucked out into the cold vacuum space through a hole the size of my nostrils, squeezed into a fine red paste as I was spat across the atmosphere, my liquidized entrails slowly spiraling across the cloudy skies. I couldn't take it any longer. I needed to put myself out of my misery, at least temporarily. Sleep would be ignorance of any problem, and ignorance, I told myself, was bliss. I repeated this mantra over and over as I pulled the pills from the medical cabinet and drowned the two without a hesitation, followed by a quick sip of my water bottle. Ignorance was bliss. Blackness clouded the edge of my vision as I climbed into the sleeping bag. The pills were beginning to take effect. I closed my eyes and was ferried away from that ticking metal coffin in the sky. I didn't dream, of course. I never dreamt up there. But I enjoyed a few hours of comfortable blackness. When I awoke, the pill bottle was still clutched in my hand. I had it pressed up against my chest in the warm confines of my sleeping bag. There was a slight buzzing coming from the strip light on the roof I had never noticed before. It wasn't uncomfortable exactly, just disquieting, especially having only just woken up. I studied it carefully until my retinas were scorched blue by the bright glow. I closed my eyes and tried to shake off its imprints on the back of my eyes. Sweat caked itself on my body, as it always did when I woke up, and I couldn't wait to get the sleeping garment off and have a shower. It was always too warm in the sleeping bag. From outside the small box of my compartment, I heard a noise, an echoing thump. Just a thermal ping, I told myself. Just the metal expanding and contracting outside. Nothing more. Still, I was frozen in place, listening out for any other noise, despite telling myself there was nothing to fear. Then came another thump. Another deep, echoing thump. The color must have drained from my face, because my entire body went cold when I heard it. I almost felt the blood squeeze from my veins. I began to squirm in my sleeping bag, trying to free my arm so I could tear off the restraints that stopped me from floating around the compartment while I slept. I was aching to get out, the noises outside making me suddenly very uncomfortable. Then came the third thump. This couldn't be just a fluke. This couldn't just be heat expansions. I stopped thrashing for a second and listened. There it was again. It was regular, some kind of repetitive banging sound. It was coming from the opposite side of the station, near the flight deck. The next one, however, sounded slightly closer, and the one after that more so. The gaps between the bangs began to decrease, getting closer each time. They were footsteps. I was still strapped into the sleeping bag when I came to this realization, and whatever chills had run across my body before now paled in comparison to this. It was like I had been dropped from my warm sleeping compartment to the dark wastes of Siberia, spinning madly as I fell. Fear and a lightheaded dizziness consumed me. I heard a slight pause as they reached the small step where the flight deck transitioned into the living area. Shivers racked my body as I fumbled with the straps, trying to get out before whatever was the source of the footsteps reached me. My mind reeled, unable to think over the pounding of footsteps. This couldn't be real. This could not be real. The straps came loose and I wriggled out of the bag. The footsteps shaking the whole station as it got closer. Great crashing impacts, just feet away now. I was sobbing as I went to the door handle, pressing it shut in a vain attempt to keep whatever was out there from getting in. There was one final step as the source of the sound came face to face with the door of my sleeping compartment. Then, silence. I could hear my heavy breathing as I pressed my ear up to the plastic of the door, listening out for whatever was out there. Nothing. Just silence. Something heavy slammed into the door, and I jumped back in terror, slamming my head and body against the back wall. The impact echoed away, and the station fell into silence once again. Several minutes passed before I plucked up the courage to move. Not a single sound had disturbed the silence up to that point, and I had been forced to listen in terror to the sound of my own desperate shallow breaths. Gingerly, I clasped the handle and listened. Still nothing. Everything sounded calm out there. With one movement, I swallowed and threw open the sliding door. I winced at the squeak of its rollers. The station expanded before me, seemingly huge, dark, and empty. The whole space was stationary and quiet. Nothing out here. I remained there for a few seconds, watching like a nervous gazelle at a watering hole, wary of predators stalking in the long grass. Slowly, I pulled myself out. I felt like I was riddled with the eyes of hundreds, all watching me. My skin suddenly felt very vulnerable. Whatever was out there, it scared me beyond what I thought was possible. It showed me the cracks in the facade. Slowly, I began to move towards the kitchen, running my eyes over every surface, my body weak and shaking. The air was warm, and still, I began to steady my breathing. I kept darting my eyes though, convinced something was waiting for me, just out of my field of view. "I think someone's here," I hissed into the radio, looking over my shoulder as I did. "Soyuz, do you read? I think someone's here." The response that came through the speakers was crackly and garbled, pierced occasionally by harsh electronic tones or the buzz of static, but it was recognizable. It was Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto No. 1 in B-flat minor. I recognized it from a long time ago, from a different time. No words, just music. Soyuz 21, Soyuz 21, do you read? I repeated as the music stopped and the transition faded away. Commander, answer me! There was nothing. Except another quick burst of the music again. It lasted a few seconds before stopping again. Leaning down, I examined the dial, and sure enough, I was on the correct frequency. Please, I begged, tears welling up in my eyes out of fear. The fear of my only lifeline to the outside world down there being severed. Nothing. Except the music. It didn't stop this time. It carried on. It lasted a good minute before the song reached its conclusion. And I was once again left in shocked silence. With a numbness in my heart, I placed the mouthpiece back on its stand and pulled myself from the chair. I was alone up here. Or maybe I wasn't, and whoever else was there and myself were just alone together. It made no sense. How could someone else be up here? How could there be someone on the station without me knowing? There was nowhere to hide. I saw every inch of the pressurized space of the ship every single day. Then, it struck me. There was one place I didn't go. Flight Engineer Zolobov's sleeping compartment. It had been undisturbed since the day he left. I turned around to face it, looking at the door with a new surging intensity that I hadn't been capable of before. It was locked when I tried it. I couldn't remember whether it had been me or Zolobov who had locked it that day. Although I was certain I didn't know where the key was, even if it was still on the station. The keyhole was tiny, not wide enough to look through. It would have been too dark on the other side to see anything. I had to find a way to open it. The kitchen was my first stop. I found a knife. It was a metal blade with a flat plastic handle, about 8 inches long, and it glinted alluringly in the powerful station lights. I pulled off the plastic sheath that covered the blade and headed for the door. With all my ferocity, all my fear, I pounded the knife into the door. The blade sank in maybe an inch before I pulled it out again, and gave another powerful stab at the plastic. This time, the blade slid in better, all the way up to the handle, and when I pulled it out, light flooded into the darkened compartment. Slipping my hand around the doorframe to keep myself in place, I gave a mighty kick, and the plastic cracked and splintered. It was only about 1/3 of an inch thick, so my bare foot went through the hole my knife had wrought pretty easily, collecting several plastic splinters as it went. Withdrawing my stinging foot and pulling out the splinters, I tore open the door, which now hung off its rails loosely. The inside of the compartment was a dark coffin, next to identical to mine. It smelled terrible though, of dried blood and sweat and other biological things. I guess the blood, which was now a rust-covered stain on the sleeping bag which hung on one wall, had come from the night Zolobov had spent in here while we waited for a Soyuz to evacuate him. I had bandaged his hand pretty badly, and it had leaked dark crimson and translucent yellow fluids all night. He had been in such pain, I could hear him from outside the compartment, whispering to himself and occasionally sobbing. I had been the one who had been tasked with the gruesome endeavor of scraping his fingers off the inside of the airlock hatch. All this came back to me as I hung nervously in the entrance of the compartment. I flicked on the light, and it spilled an appealing orange glow across the scene with a cheery buzz. The first thing I noticed were the pill bottles. There were at least 10 floating around the floor, their shiny labels dapped bright reflections. I picked one up and looked at it. General painkillers. I gave a low whistle. There were enough painkillers to numb an elephant, or there would have been if the bottles hadn't all been empty. Had Zolobov been taking them? Was he an addict? Another possibility formed itself in my mind. Had he taken them all in one go? Had he been preparing himself for an accident? Had he deliberately sliced off his own fingers? With the amount of painkillers here, he wouldn't have felt a thing, as that hatch had come down on his hand. I began to root around, worried about what else I would find. The stench of body odor was strong. I guess it had been fermenting in here for a while. Then, I found a notebook. It was wrapped in brown paper, and when I found it, I was a little confused. It was small, about the size of my palm, and had a black cover. Flipping it open on a random page, I found that it was in Zolobov's distinctive scrawl he called handwriting. It read, July 17th. Boris woke up at 5:45 ALMT. Took a shower for 12 minutes at 5:49 ALMT. When finished, shaved for approximately 5 minutes. Missed several spots. Left the shower compartment at 6:05 ALMT. Headed to living area. Drank approximately 200 milliliters of water. Ate breakfast. And so it continued. I felt sick. This was about me. This was a detailed record of my activities that day, right down to accounts of our conversations. I flicked to the next page, and sure enough, there was a description of my activities on July 18th. It was written in eye-watering detail. From the amount of time I spent on the toilet to how I ate and drank. It was almost clinical. Going through the book, there was an entry for each day since we had lunch from Baikonur right up to 3 days before the accident. I could feel a lump in my throat. All sympathy I had held for my flight engineer rapidly draining away. Whatever this was, it was disgusting and invasive. Slowly and coldly, I wrapped the notebook back in the paper, placed it back down on the shelf, and backed out into the living area. Whatever was happening here, Zolobov had been in on it. Why had he stopped was the real question. Surely, just giving up 2 days before the accident couldn't be a coincidence.
Ops 3, do you read? Please confirm, Ops 3.
The radio was barking behind me. I ignored it, still staring at the compartment, my jaw slack. How long had it been going like that? I didn't know. Still, I didn't rush to answer Commander Zurov's transmission. I moved slowly, without a definite purpose, keeping my eyes fixed on the sleeping compartment. What the fuck? I swore loudly into the mouthpiece. Where have you been?
Say again, Ops 3. I do not understand.
Why have you been ignoring my transmissions, Soyuz? Rage bubbled to my voice, but I tried to keep it even for the sake of anyone back on Earth who may have been listening.
Ops 3, we haven't received the transmission from you yesterday.
That's a lie. You were sending out that music.
Listen, Ops 3. I've talked to Flight Engineer Rostefensky. We're both very worried about you. We think perhaps you're having some kind of breakdown.
Breakdown? I murmured slowly. No, I'm not having it.
It's perfectly understandable in your position, Boris. Perfectly normal.
Zurov purred, his voice slow and gentle.
Nobody blames you. All the stress you've been put under.
A breakdown? I repeated once again. Was it possible? Could I be going insane?
Yes, you've been up there alone so long. You started to imagine things, started to see things.
Are you sure?
Perhaps we should come early, Boris. Perhaps we should come and help you.
Something about Zurov's voice hinted at a hidden malignance to his words, no longer hidden by his forced friendliness. A pretense he was clearly straining to keep up. It sent chills down my spine. No, that won't be necessary.
I think it will, Boris. I think we'll have to set a course for Salyut 5 right now.
No, I don't want to disrupt the mission. I gave a nervous chuckle. The mission, that's what's important. Zurov was silent for a second, considering my comments. The station was filled with the sound of static. I prayed he would agree to stay away for another 2 days. There was something about Zurov. Something I only just noticed that scared me, and the more time I spent away from him, the better.
Yes, of course, you can manage 2 days. You should get some sleep though. Take the sleeping pills. You sound tired.
I'll do that. See you in 2 days then.
Get some sleep, Boris. We'll be here before you know it.
How long had he been referring to me by my first name? That was against protocol.
Everything's going to be fine.
I placed the mouthpiece back on the clip and swallowed nervously. 2 days, stuck up here. I was now unsure which option was worse, being trapped up here or being trapped on Soyuz with the smooth-talking Zurov. I mulled over what he said. It seemed entirely possible to me that I was having a breakdown. The things I had seen, the things I had heard, those couldn't be real. They couldn't be. Footsteps were impossible in microgravity. That's what I told myself. But the implication of everything being just a hallucination was equally sinister. Was I going insane? Everything had seemed so real when they had been happening. The notebook had felt real. The footsteps couldn't have just been my imagination, could they? And the carbon filter, had that really come loose from its piping at all? It would explain why the computer never detected any faults. They had all been in my head. There was one cast iron way to prove all this, of course. I could go to Zolobov's compartment, I could unwrap the brown paper, and I could look at the notebook. If it wasn't a paranoia-fueled hallucination, all the writing could still be there. If it was just in my head, all the writing would be gone, or even better, the notebook wouldn't be there at all. Of course, it is never that simple. I tore open the brown paper, and there it was. With a nauseous reticence, I opened the first page and confirmed the writing was still there. My stomach sank. With a burst of rage, I threw the book across the room. It slammed against the far wall, then fluttered away. There was nothing I could do then. It had been there, in my hands, solid and real, which meant I was left with two options. Either I hadn't been hallucinating and the book was real, or I was further down the rabbit hole of my own head than I thought. Both of the possibilities were, unfortunately, terrifying. I needed some time, I decided, to figure out what to do. I needed to get things straight in my head. I had to do something about this. I couldn't be paralyzed by inaction any longer. I couldn't take it. Slowly, I crossed back to the kitchen, my hands trembling as I pulled my body through the air. All the while, my head pounded, heavy with the throb of blood. I wasn't sure what was real anymore. Then I remembered. The pills. Zurov had told me to take the pills. Perhaps I was tired. Zurov had never lied to me before, I noted. He wouldn't say anything that could put me in harm's way, surely. Commander Zurov had my best interest at heart. It was no use. I couldn't fool myself with the bullshit excuses about best interests. I knew I didn't trust that man anymore. Not for another velvet syllable that was wrought by his distant throat. Not for another instruction echoed across the void. I was done listening to him. After my internal debate finished, I steadied my breathing and decided to look at my problem logically. I tried to block out the memories of the footsteps, and the book, and the filter, and just look at it from an objective point of view. That was pretty much all I could do at this point. I could take the pills, or I could sit here in terror and confusion for 2 days. I knew, like it or not, that I would have to take the pills at some point. I couldn't stay awake for another 2 days. Yet, I couldn't sleep. I knew that natural sleep would be an impossibility, after everything that had happened. So, I took the pills. I washed them down with a sip of water, and soon felt everything drifting on an ocean of sticky black tar. It took all my effort to simply pull myself back to my sleeping compartment and climb in the sleeping bag before I sank into the vicious black liquid of my mind, and felt it soak into my skin and fill my lungs. Sleep was silent and black, as always. Once again, The night passed without dreams. I was awoken once again by the hum of the strip light. It all had the stirrings of some horrible deja vu with me. It gnawed at the pit of my stomach, all the knowledge, all the memories, and all the fear that it might happen again. There was something else there too, though. The knowledge that possibly I may not be alone up here. Something was clearly very wrong. I reflected, and my policy of ignorance had failed so badly up to this point, I was nearly sick. I needed to confront it. I needed to find whatever truth lay behind the events here. I climbed out of the sleeping compartment and looked around. It took me a second or two to see the writing. When I did, however, my heart stopped. It was everywhere, all across the walls, large and black. It had been smeared in some black substance, using the end of a thumb. Christ, I shuddered at the sight of it. Seeing something wholly unnatural and wholly unknown, it was an ugly confirmation of something that had lurked within me for days. It had been easy to be unafraid of the unknown when the unknown had been cramped in a safe in the back of my mind. Now, with the unknown on full view in front of me, in all its horrific glory, it was impossible to deny my terror. The words didn't mean anything. No, it was their existence which scared me. They were just numbers, or random Russian phrases. But the fact that they were there, it couldn't be real, I decided. It could not be real. Slowly, I turned around and climbed back into my sleeping compartment. I slid the door closed again and took a deep breath. This was just in my head. It wasn't real. I was just imagining the things in my head spilling out onto the walls of the station. When I opened the door, it would be gone, I decided. The writing would be gone. It was in my mind, and I was in control of my mind. I was in control. With another breath, I slid open the door and looked out, praying it would be gone. It was gone. The walls were bare. It had all been in my head. What was wrong with me? Slowly dragging my eyes over every surface for any trace of black markings, I pulled myself towards the flight deck and the radio transmitter. I couldn't do it any longer. I had to call Soyuz. I had to get off. If I didn't, I feared the damage would be irreparable, and I would be trapped in a semi-real world of my own hallucinations forever. When I flicked on the radio transmitter, however, something was already being transmitted on the other side. The green lights flickered in confirmation that the set was powered up, and as soon as they did, I tore up the mouthpiece. Before I could speak, however, a harsh voice jumped from the speakers.
Having visual and auditory hallucinations, along with paranoia and loss of appetite.
It was Zudov. His voice relaxed me. Despite my misgivings for him, I knew it was the same man I had been talking to all this time. His words, on the other hand, were troubling to say the least. They clearly weren't directed at me. Who was he talking to? They hadn't informed me that communication with ground had resumed, and I had told the commander specifically to do that.
Keep observing him.
Another voice now. Not Zurov, and not Flight Engineer Rostefensky. If there were only two people on Soyuz 21, then Zurov must be talking to someone elsewhere. Someone on the ground. There was a hiss of static, and the channel broke up into meaningless beeping. I listened in anger. I needed to know who they had been talking about, although I had a sinking feeling I already knew.
Air is contaminated.
The channel was back, and the other man was still speaking. Contaminated. I didn't quite catch the first half of the sentence through the interference, but that word alone was enough to spook me.
Yes, concentration is up to 21%. Carry on observing, Soyuz. Nothing more.
There was a hiss, and the stranger went silent. The air went dead. I swallowed. The noise sounded deafening in the new silence. What had I just heard? Who had they been talking about? The obvious answer was just on the tip of my tongue. But I dare not to say it. I didn't even dare to think it. It was too dangerous, too terrifying to comprehend. I looked down at the radio set and saw something chilling. The frequency dial had changed. It certainly wasn't me who changed it. I was sure of it. That meant someone or something else was here. That meant it was all real. I closed my eyes and turned the dial back to the familiar position. The warm hiss of static greeted me, different in tone to that on the other channel. I had to know who they were talking about. I had to know whether I was alone up here. I had to know if I was losing my mind. Soyuz 21. Come in, Soyuz 21. I asked eventually, eyes still clamped fairly shut.
Reading Ops 3. Reading loud and clear.
Soyuz, I began, then stopped to take a deep breath. Soyuz, have you had any communication with ground yet? There was a short, heavy pause before Commander Zurov spoke. When he did, I could tell by the tone of his voice there was a sickening smile on his lips.
None whatsoever, I'm afraid, Salute. Still out because of these solar flares.
That was it. The big lie. The tipping point. As soon as those words reached me, I nearly broke down in despair. A little sob escaped my mouth. The man I had trusted all this time. Had everything been lies?
Ops 3, do you copy?
He asked eventually, and I tried to bring myself to respond. Am I alone up here, Commander? My voice was a hoarse whisper, barely audible above the interference.
Alone? What do you mean?
I mean, is there someone else on the station?
There is no one up there, only you.
You're saying it's all in my head? You're saying I've lost my mind?
Of course not. You're just under a lot of stress, all alone up there. It's no surprise you began to see things, hear things. It was only to be expected from someone in your conditions.
I know I'm not crazy.
Of course you're not crazy.
He purred gently, his voice warm and reassuring. I was almost lulled back into trusting the man again.
You're just tired. You've worked hard. But don't worry, your mission is nearly over. I'll see you tomorrow.
Tomorrow, I repeated numbly. I wasn't crazy. It wasn't in my head. That man, that voice was lying to me. It had to be real. But what could I do? He would be here in less than a day, and after that, things would be far out of my hands. I tore open every cupboard, looking through every compartment, scoured every inch of the plain white metal. I searched for any slightest inclination there might be a concealed compartment somewhere elsewhere in the station. I looked for anything that could prove me right. There was nothing. I don't know how much time passed in my search, but soon I realized looking was a fool's errand. There was nothing to find. What if it wasn't human? I spoke out loud, to my own shock. I never talked to myself. My voice was small and insignificant, even in the cramped air of the station. The idea haunted me. I had never believed in the paranormal, but my heart beat faster just thinking about it. There was clearly an entity of some kind up here, and if it wasn't a man... Then came the rasping, a deep, wet hiss from within the walls. It was followed by another. This one sounded more like a gasp. I froze as I listened, the regular inhaling and exhaling of air. Something was breathing. Something inside the walls. Commander? I whispered over the radio, jerking my head around as I heard another breath. It was only just audible when I was on the radio set. It seemed to emanate from the living area bulkhead. I can hear it breathe.
Breathe.
The response was swift and, surprisingly from Zurov, nervous. I can hear it breathing inside the walls. It's awake. I held out the mouthpiece and pressed down the transmit button, hoping he would hear it.
That's just the ventilator system.
He decided doubtfully after I'd finished.
You must have ruptured a tube. I'll take a look when we get there.
I let go of the mouthpiece and tried to steady my own breathing, but the great deep breath coming from the living area distracted me from my rhythm. It couldn't just be a torn air pipe. It had to be something more. Slowly, I pulled myself up and began to head slowly, gingerly, towards the source of the noise. The knife was still in the kitchen drawer, so I withdrew it and swung around to face the noise. It was coming from within the maintenance panel. I pressed my ear against it, trying to hear what was within it. The metal was cold against my skin. There was a loud bang from within, and I withdrew my head instantly in terror. It was followed by a desperate scratching. I pushed myself backwards and crashed into the wall behind me. The scratching must have gone on for hours. As I sat there in sheer terror, knife raised in front of me. Eventually, it began to slow, and then it stopped. Just silence remained. I slowly unfurled, tears streaming down my face. I couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't.
Ops 3, come in. We are beginning our approach.
I swore loudly and viciously, tears running off my lips. Not him. Not now. I was stuck between whatever horror was on the station and whatever horror was off of it. Fuck you, Zurov! I snatched the mouthpiece and yelling down it in pure fear.
Say again, Ops 3?
He sounded indignant. Stay away from me! I warned, my voice shaky. All the while, the hairs on the back of my neck were beginning to stand upright. Don't bring that ship anywhere near here.
These are my orders, Commander Volinov.
I have a knife, I threatened, knowing my options were running out. He had forced my hand. There was a silence for a second. Time passed by like thick black tar.
Is that a threat, Commander Volinov?
Zurov was cold in his outrage, but I could hear strings of pure ferocity in his voice.
Did you just threaten me?
Stay away from me. I sobbed once again. Please.
I'm so sorry.
He decided on eventually, and the frequency went dead. I could see the black dot of the Soyuz capsule on the horizon of the Earth, silhouetted in front of the glowing blue. I had maybe half an hour before he got here. It wasn't enough. I couldn't think anymore. The thing in the walls was still silent again, as far as I could tell. With a beating heart, I turned back to the maintenance panel where the noise had been coming from. I jumped out of my skin when it gave a screech, followed by another. It was the sound of nails on a chalkboard, or something like that. Staring at the panel, I saw a sight I will never forget. The screech was coming from a screw. It was turning in its sockets, giving a mighty squeal each time it did. There was a clink as the screw finished its last rotation and floated gently away from its holding. Whatever was turning the screws moved onto the second. I backed away slowly and clutched my knife so hard my knuckles were white. My tears were in streams down my face, leaving salty deposits on my eyelids. I gritted my teeth. It felt like the content of my stomach was about to rush up my throat. It was heavy and nauseating. Another sob racked my quivering body. I crawled into the airlock hatch entrance, right next to Zolobov's dried blood. I ran my fingers over the stain and closed my eyes. In my head, I tried to drown out the sounds with desperate prayers, but it wasn't enough. There was a heavy clunk as I felt Soyuz impact. Cracking open one eye, I looked back at the station. Floating in the air was the now detached maintenance compartment panel, along with a handful of screws. I heard movement from within. Turning my focus back to Soyuz, I banged on the airlock door, then felt a hiss and the seals began to fill. This was it. The hairs on the back of my neck were pricking up again. I had to get out. I had to get out now. The airlock hatch hissed and swung open. My eyes fell into the Soyuz capsule, into the tiny space where the two astronauts would be, where the man I had been talking to for the last week would be sitting. The capsule was empty.